In the dark, suffocating space, light itself seemed to be devoured. All that could be heard were heavy, ragged breaths, a twisted smile on a battlefield stained crimson. Beams of crimson light rained down relentlessly, leaving no escape. One by one they fell, but amidst it all, a faint glimmer of hope flickered. We've finally made it this far. Despite facing its rage, their will remained unbroken. If we can just defeat it, we'll... Everything happened so fast. A beam of light pierced straight through Riley's chest. The sudden pain made him freeze for a moment. His chest was pierced. His eyes went blank. Riley's dream was over. His body felt weightless as his legs crumpled beneath him. With no strength left, his entire body collapsed. All that remained was regret. So, this is it. Blood pooled on the ground, surrounded by the corpses of the fallen. He slowly accepted it. This was a fatal blow. He looked at the wreckage and his comrades who had already fallen. Shame filled Gray's heart. Am I really going to die? Without being able to do a single thing? His hateful gaze fixed on the creature hovering in the sky. Someday, an unknown calamity appeared and wiped out an entire continent. This was the enemy of humanity, the purgger. As it continued its destruction, Ray watched the man who was bravely blocking its attacks with his shield. All he could do was place his hopes in them. The team formed to protect humanity. It included the young man who survived a giant meteor impact the world's shield, Brian Miller, and the blue-haired girl summoning countless magic circles at once, a great sage said to possess the power of an entire army. The great sage, Bella Albright. There was also the young man in green armor holding a bow. His arrows flew with deadly sharpness and precision, an archer who once took down a high-level dragon beast. With just a single arrow, the divine archer Jacob Bloomfield, and the golden-eyed woman who never flinched in the face of danger, using her immense speed to overcome any obstacle. The strongest swordswoman in all of history, the sword Saint Amiguai. Watching them, Gray felt even more insignificant. As for people like me, we were called the support unit. He had known it all along. That feeling of being used and discarded. The truth was even crueler. In reality, we were nothing more than sacrificial pawns. Riley watched their skillful and powerful fighting techniques with awe. These people, they're on a completely different level. I know that the graduates from the Academy of the World Federation are all incredibly talented. But seeing these warriors close in so easily, he finally understood the gap between himself and them. I never imagined the difference between us was this great. The purger was being suppressed by magical orbs. Gray trembled on the ground. Meanwhile, Amy continued her fierce assault, each of her sword strikes filled with immense power. The resentment in his heart finally boiled over inside Gray. The humiliation was unbearable. We trained so hard, too. But Amy, using her incredible speed, forced the purger constantly on the defensive. Her powerful attack finally managed to wound it. But the creature showed no fear. It laughed with glee. "Oh ho, you actually managed to wound me!" Now its body began radiating a powerful crimson spiritual energy. The pressure was completely different from before. It was getting stronger. Not bad. It's time. The purger created a spiral of energy. In an instant, it transformed into long blades of energy that shot forward. With just one move, everyone left standing was killed, their bodies sliced apart. It was a brutal scene. The only one left alive was that vile thing. Ray's pupils contracted in shock. They're all dead. The purger casually remarked, "I suppose it's time to get serious." Ray couldn't believe it. It wiped them all out in a single blow. And it says it was just playing around until now. He slowly closed his eyes, letting go of the chaos around him. Ray accepted the grim reality. There was no way to win. His body lay still on the ground. Suddenly, Ray jolted awake. He snapped his eyes open. Wait. How long has it been since my heart was pierced? He wondered, seeing his reflection in a pool of blood. Why am I still alive? Amidst the sound of dripping blood, a voice echoed, "I have found you." Ray felt as if he were being pulled into another dimension. A magical light appeared before him, gradually opening into a black hole, beckoning him closer. The one who possesses immense power. The sensation was surreal. A world opened up before him like a vast city. Ray found he could stand his wounds completely healed. Where am I? Is this the afterlife? But this place feels so desolate. He felt like he was being watched. He turned his head, and there behind him stood a mysterious figure in a black cloak. "Who are you?" The figure was Kronos. Though his face was hidden, he radiated an imposing aura. Kronos began to explain, "You are not dead. All of your wounds have been healed." An ancient magical space materialized, bathed in brilliant golden light. Riley was stunned. An image appeared showing his wounded body from moments ago. He asked quietly, "Did you heal me?" Kronos calmly replied, "No, it was not me but your own power that did it." Still skeptical, Ray touched his chest. "My own power, I cannot explain it. Even I cannot fully analyze your power." Kronos said, his assessment serious. "But I can assure you that your power is even greater than that of the purgger. That is if you learn how to control it." Doubt still lingered in Gray's heart. "Are you saying I can win this fight?" Kronos' tone was cold yet firm. "I don't know, and I don't have high expectations, but I do believe that purgger must be destroyed. And for that reason..." Before he could finish his sentence, he lunged forward and pierced Ray's chest just as before. Then he whispered, "There, you may go now." A magic circle protected Ray's chest as he began to return to his own timeline. Kronos' voice echoed, "I will lend you my power." It all happened as quickly as a dream. Ray returned to his body still lying on the ground. He dug his sword into the dirt, using all his strength to stand up. The sword began to transform. Its tip was changing color. This was once an ordinary weapon, but now it had become a black sword. Kronos' voice echoed in his mind, "Now it is your power. My power is not something that can be perceived with mortal eyes." Riley was ready to fight. The noise alerted the purgger. Just as it turned, Gray was already on it, striking with a powerful slash. Gray was now radiating pure killing intent. He was filled with resolve. The purgger could feel that immense magical energy. Impossible to think someone this strong still existed. It backed away, assessing him cautiously. It looked like the attack had actually done some damage. Like a bolt of lightning, Ray's body overflowed with spiritual energy. Without hesitation, Ray pressed forward, keeping his focus as he searched for the enemy's weakness. "My power is greater than before." Ray could finish his sentence. It launched a swift counterattack. Don't underestimate him. He dealt with the man in the blink of an eye, splitting his body in two. The man realized it too late, looking on in utter horror at his severed body as blood sprayed everywhere. The purifier looked incredibly arrogant. He gloated impressive. Then he turned his back, defenseless. "You made me use my full power." Suddenly from behind, a pair of blazing red eyes stared at him, as if trying to burn his entire body to ashes. The purifier felt crushed by an invisible force. A figure shrouded in dark magic stood defiantly before him. In his hand was a black sword. It was gray, floating in midair. He wasn't dead. The black smoke wasn't just on the sword. It had become one with his body. The purifier began to panic. "What the hell?" He quickly activated a shield. "Are you even human?" Half of Gray's face was distorted. The black sword had now grown enormous, and he swung it straight at the purifier. But the power was too immense. In an instant, the shield shattered and the sword slash cut the man in two. The attack also carved a massive gash across the ground. The purifier kept asking his foolish question, "Are you really human?" Gray's voice was filled with fury as he stood before the murderer. "But that should be my question to ask." Suddenly, a barbaric laugh echoed out. Gray took a step back. Despite being dealt such a deep blow, the purifier was still alive. Gray uttered, "You're still alive. Truly, your power is not to be underestimated." The man breathed heavily, then brought his face close to Gray's and let out a threat. "Well, well, I will crush you again and again until you die." Not wanting to argue with a madman, Ray quickly gathered all his strength and slashed straight at him. The powerful slash gravely injured him. A yellow fluid oozed from his body. He screamed in agony and cursed, "You monster!" But the purifier suddenly froze. He clasped his hands together as if casting a spell. His body began to emit strange beams of light as he focused to connect with a great power source from within himself. His wings changed into a rainbow of 5 colors. His 2 palms faced each other, preparing to cast a spell. Between his palms was a magic circle. The flow of time was suddenly altered. Nightfall appeared, enveloping everything. The purifier mumbled, "Time's up." Watching the moon gradually appear, Ray was a bit confused. What's going on? It seems to have suddenly turned into night. He gave a sharp, unconcerned smile. At some point, Ray had appeared behind the purifier. His voice echoed softly, "So what?" He then launched an attack straight at his neck, but now his skin was like a very hard and firm protective membrane. Ray paused for a moment. The purifier spoke in a scornful, arrogant tone. "It's useless. In this dream realm, nothing can harm me. Don't resist pointlessly. Take a last look at the stars." Ray was intimidated. He stood frozen, not daring to move. Deep within his eyes, he could clearly see a light from the sky hurtling towards him. It rushed forward at great speed, growing larger. It was as large and bright as the stars in the sky. The purifier's voice seeped into his mind. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Now that star was very close. It looked like a giant fireball. Then it fell straight onto where Gray was standing, creating a terrifying explosion that devastated everything around it. The purifier flew up looking at the rubble. After a while, the sight of the explosion had turned into a deep pit. But there was no sign of Gray. He gloated. "You can't be revived if you've been turned to ash and dust." But from above, a magic portal began to appear. The purifier was confused. "What is that?" As it took a clearer shape, it looked like a clock that stored time. He suddenly realized. It was the voice of Kronos echoing out. "You've gathered an incredible amount of power. This should be enough to send you back." Hearing that familiar voice, the purifier fell into a panic. "No way!" Kronos paid him no mind, continuing to speak calmly. "Can you hear me, wielder of great power? Use all of my strength. I will send you back to the past." The purifier's agitation reached its peak. He roared, "Kronos, you bastard!" Ignoring him, Kronos continued, "This is all I can do for you." The time clock began to activate, turning back to the past. As time turned back to 1, his voice faded away. "I entrust the fate of this world to you. Perhaps this is not the end, but a new beginning for Ray." Rayleigh woke up. He was lying on a green lawn. The sky was still clear and the world was still at peace. He slowly sat up. "Where am I?" Looking at the surrounding scenery gave one a feeling of healing. It was a place full of life. Looking into the distance, he unconsciously recognized the mountains and forests. The houses, the village. Is this my hometown? Ronaldo Village. Everything feels so nostalgic, like a dream, but it was destroyed 15 years ago. Why is it still here? Ray vaguely recalled Kronos' last words, and he suddenly realized what he said. It really happened. The agitation made the wound on his wrist throb with pain. Looking at his injury, he pondered. This wound, that's right. Around this time, I was often bullied by Builder and the others. His body began to tremble. He told himself, I can't let them beat me up like that again. In the past, Ray saw himself as too weak to fight back. But they're so strong. I can't win. And so he had accepted his fate, not daring to think of greater things. Defeating the purifier is just a pipe dream. Ray stood up and walked towards the forest, reassuring himself. When I get a little stronger, I'll think about dealing with them. I don't want to get hurt. He suddenly stopped mid-step. It was Builder's gang. They were intentionally blocking his path, every one of them with a smug look on their face. Builder spoke in a condescending tone. I've been looking for you. What a pain. Fed up, Ray didn't want to argue as they tossed a sword at him and ordered him to take it. He had no intention of obeying and remained silent. Seeing this, the others pushed him harder. Stop playing dumb. Let's just have a fight and see. Ray tried to avoid it, worried about his body's condition. Oh, a practice match. Sorry, but my wounds haven't healed yet. Thanks for the invitation, but unfortunately I can't join in until I'm better. Boulder and his group, however, had no intention of letting him go. Their contempt for him was obvious. Boulder feigned reassurance. Don't worry, the blade is really dull, so it'll be safe. Knowing their malicious intentions, Riley bluntly called them out. No matter how dull the blade is, it's still a big piece of iron, if you hit someone in a vital spot with it. Before he could finish, Boulder cut him off, too agitated to be lectured. Shut your mouth. He slammed his own sword on the ground. Boulder began to threaten him. You think you have the right to refuse? If you don't like the sword, he said, then charged forward with aggressive confidence, then you can fight with your bare hands. Ray was completely stunned. He wants to fight me, while I'm unarmed. What kind of practice match is this? He then tried to piece together his past before he regressed. A former army medic had told him that the reason his swordsmanship never improved was because of an injury he'd received as a child. Thinking back on it, perhaps my life as a failure began right here. not wanting to have regrets again, not wanting to live a useless life like his last one. Unconsciously, he dodged Boulder's attack. Riley himself was surprised by what he had just done. He was confused. Boulder's attack was a blur, but then he launched his next one. This time, Ray dodged it too. "Are you always this slow?" Boulder tried with all his might to take Ray down, but he dodged every single attack. It was as if Ray was starting to understand the key to it all. No. It wasn't that. Boulder was just furious he couldn't land a hit. "You bastard, why can't I hit you?" As the sword was about to slash his face, Ray simply focused on his opponent's movements, then lightly dodged the blow and skillfully evaded every single swing. He was understanding his body better now. "I've gotten faster." Boulder's cronies were all stunned. The one with the bowl cut found it hard to believe. "The way he's moving, it's like he's a completely different person." Ray quickly picked up the sword from the ground. "I may not have the body I once had." He gripped the sword, determined to fight back. "But I still have the memories of every battle I've ever fought." Boulder attacked from above, aiming to land a finishing blow. "Take this." It didn't go as he expected. Ray countered with surprising force, knocking him off balance and sending him stumbling backward. This time, Ray was still worried, but more for his opponent. He fell from just that. "Is it even okay for me to be fighting a complete amateur like him?" After a moment of thought, he decided not to hold back. "No, he doesn't deserve any mercy. This piece of trash tormented me just because I couldn't fight." Now he wanted to change his humiliating past. His eyes filled with resolve. But that's not true anymore. Ray swung, sending Boulder's sword flying somewhere else. He grew anxious. Damn it. What is this situation? In the past, he never would have dropped his sword so easily. He's even more of a novice than I thought. With his opponent now unarmed, Ray began to lecture him. "You've probably never even been trained on how to parry a sword." He then stomped his foot hard, making Boulder flinch. "But don't worry, because you all taught me something." Ray raised his sword, a smile on his face, but his eyes were filled with hostility. "As long as the blade is dull, it's fine to hit people with it." The sword slashed across Boulder's shoulder. The flowing blood made him panic, and fresh droplets splattered on his face, a reminder of the pain. Boulder collapsed to his knees, clutching his shoulder and crying out. Things had gotten out of Ray's control. This incident wasn't part of his plan. He hesitated. Wasn't the blade supposed to be dull? Doubtfully, he held the sword up to inspect it again. The blade was indeed chipped and nicked. Ray was a bit confused. It's clearly dull. If this were a sharp sword, he would probably be dead by now. But that didn't mean he was going to forgive him. The next second, his eyes turned ice cold. Ray slammed the flat of the sword straight across Boulder's face. The powerful blow made his nose bleed and broke a couple of his teeth. The force of the blow sent him sprawling backward. Ray showed no mercy, thinking only to himself, "I think I'll just keep this dull sword." Riley walked closer, completely overpowering Boulder, who was now crawling on the ground. He asked sarcastically, "What's wrong? Why are you screaming so much?" Boulder was trembling and on the verge of tears, but Ray kept berating him. His face was relaxed now, and though he was smiling, you could clearly see the anger underneath. "The person who said a dull sword would be safe, that was you, wasn't it?" Boulder was too scared to speak. Just when it seemed he had learned his lesson, he suddenly turned and ordered his cronies, "What are you guys standing there for? Get him!" The heavier one, having witnessed the fight, hesitated. "But he suddenly got so strong." The guy with the bowl cut, however, was still aggressive and had no respect for anyone. "Let's all jump him! Get him from behind!" Then they all rushed him from different directions, surrounding Ray. Unafraid, he stood tall and said coolly, "What's this? You want another round?" The whole group frantically attacked at once, but Ray remained motionless. He muttered, "I was going to let this go." But now all that could be heard were cries and whimpers of pain. Every single one of them was on their knees, their faces bruised and swollen. Looking at them, Ray remembered the dark days of his past. "Back then I was so scared of these guys." Model, he immediately started questioning them. "You're from the Saria swordsmanship dojo, right?" Builder didn't dare to look him in the eye, but he still admitted it. Then the fat guy started to confess. "We thought we were strong enough, so we haven't been going there lately." Ray felt helpless at their childish thinking. "Strong enough, huh? I shouldn't have expected too much from the dojo, but still it has its uses." He rested the sword on his shoulder. He made a demand to Builder's group. "Introduce me to the dojo. That place only accepts people through referrals." "Isn't that right?" Humiliated Builder flinched. "Can't you ask someone else? If I tell my master that I lost, I can't even imagine what she'd say." Ray swung his sword through the air threateningly. Or maybe we should continue where we left off. Builder's face darkened. Terrified as if he'd seen a ghost, he abandoned his comrades and took off running. Then his voice echoed back, "I'll introduce you, the dojo is this way." The guys with him were all stunned. "What? Hey, wait, Builder, don't leave us behind!" A while later, Builder and the others had led Ray to a town. As they walked, Builder asked curiously, "But why do you want to go to the dojo anyway?" Ray answered, "This dojo can give a recommendation to the academy, can't it?" Builder had skipped many days, so he only vaguely knew about it. "Yeah, I think I've heard something about that." Ray stated that this was what he was interested in. "That's the reason I want to go." The long-haired guy interrupted the conversation. "I don't think you need the academy. You're plenty strong already, Ray." Strict with himself, he wouldn't allow himself to get lazy because of a compliment. "If I were truly strong enough, how great would that be?" Remembering the battle with the purgger made him pensive. Even the world's strongest team was no match for the purgger. Even when I used that power, I couldn't even inflict any damage, and I don't think he was even fighting seriously. The image of the purgger empowering himself further spurred him on. I wonder how much stronger I have to get to be able to defeat that guy. However, it's not impossible. As he was lost in thought, Builder signaled that they had arrived. The only reason he came to the dojo was to get stronger. That moment, even if I only felt it for a second, I was able to control the dark power. He tried to recall his training sessions with the Sword Saint. What I focused on in that moment was the swordsmanship the Sword Saint taught me. Ray always regretted it. If only I had spent more time practicing swordsmanship under the same conditions as the Sword Saint, the outcome of that battle might have been different. After everything, he finally understood his mission for returning to the past. This must be why Kronos sent me here. A young woman's voice brought him back to reality. "So, to summarize what you're trying to tell me..." Builder's group was kneeling on the floor in remorse as the person continued to question them. "It must be their master. You used the techniques I taught you to bully a civilian, and in the end you got your butts handed to you." The master was a young woman. She had platinum blonde hair that covered one of her eyes. She was severely punishing her students. The instructor of the Saria swordsmanship dojo. Builder, still unrepentant, tried to make excuses. "Honestly, we didn't mean to bully him. We were just sparring." Angered, Saria struck him, sending him flying. The others kneeling beside him trembled. Saria, full of dignity, lectured him. "Who gave you permission to make excuses? If you consider attacking an unarmed person a spar, then what just happened was also a spar, correct?" She pointed her sword straight at Builder's eye, disappointed and unforgiving. "Leave, and never come back. All of you. From this day forward, never identify yourselves as students of this dojo again." Builder's group obeyed, helping each other out. Saria immediately turned back inside. She knelt and sincerely apologized for the incident. "It seems my former students have caused you a great deal of trouble." Ray didn't want to hold a grudge. "Please don't worry about it." She sincerely thanked him for his consideration and then got to the main point. "I heard earlier that you wished to receive a recommendation to the academy." Ray didn't deny it. Saria took a wooden sword from the rack. "To apologize for this trouble that Builder and his group caused. Before I write you a letter of recommendation, I must verify your skills." With that, she handed the sword to Ray. He immediately complied. "Understood." The two began their match. Saria deferred to him. "You may go first. Come at me whenever you're ready." Without wasting a single moment, Ray attacked. "Here I come!" Ray used his speed. Saria skillfully defended. Watching his attacks, she couldn't help but assess. His swordsmanship is so practical for his age. It's as if he's already been through countless battles. Ray continued to fight with all his might. He suddenly lowered his body, then attacked from the side. Saria acknowledged his talent. Builder and the others were no match for him. His movements are sharp with no wasted motion. This style is mostly self-taught, but sometimes his sword path looks very similar to what is taught at the academy. Saria began to grow curious. Did someone teach him? But it's still very raw. Though he has talent, she felt pleased with this new prospect. He's a diamond in the rough. Saria began to fight seriously. It's a shame to have to end it here. But it's time to bring down the curtain. Now she was even faster than before. Not one to be outdone, Ray ran alongside the instructor. With his keen senses as she parried, Ray grasped Saria's movements. Not only did he dodge the blow, but he also kept up with her movements. His spirit made her wonder endlessly. How strange. He hasn't faltered at all. How can he possibly keep up with me? Saria's body was beginning to grow tired. "No, that's not right." I only meant to test his ability a little, so why am I going all out now? And why am I so wary of this child? Ray swung his sword with great force, forcing her to retreat. Saria hesitated. I have a bad feeling about this. That was just a powerful swing, right? After the strike, the floorboards cracked. Saria was intrigued. She declared, "All right, let's end it here." But that confidence was quickly shattered. She watched in shock as Gray broke her sword with his. Stunned by the situation, Saria couldn't react, only managing to let out a stammered cry. Immediately after, the blade of her wooden sword rolled across the cold wooden floor. Looking at the scene before him, Gray thought to himself, it feels just like that time. So, I have that power now too. Suddenly, an overwhelming pain shot through him. The unexpected agony made him collapse to the ground with a loud cry. Witnessing his strange behavior, Saria asked, "What is it? Are you okay?" With a pained expression, Ray gritted his teeth, speculating, "My body can't keep up with this power." He immediately tried to compose himself and shakily got to his feet, struggling to stammer out the words. I'm fine." His face was covered in sweat as he thought, "I can barely stand. I shouldn't use this power recklessly." Looking at the person in front of him, he hesitated. Should I tell her about this? Sensing Gray's unusual gaze, Saria furrowed her brows in confusion. After composing himself, he quickly dismissed his fleeting thought. No, it's better not to. Even if I told her, she'd hardly believe me. And it's something I can't even control myself. Finding the situation awkward, Gray scratched his head in embarrassment and explained to Saria, "I was just a little distracted." Hearing Gray say that, Saria remained silent as if she couldn't believe her eyes. She stared in shock at the sword he had broken and thought, breaking my sword with a blunt wooden one. It is completely impossible. Finally, she reached a conclusion. He must have realized it too. Seeing Saria standing motionless for so long, Ray grew anxious. He asked hesitantly, Is something wrong? The more she observed the younger boy before her, the more her questions about him grew. But he doesn't intend to talk about it, does he? As she thought this, she closed her eyes, looking serious for a long moment. After she was done thinking, she turned, walked over to a trash can, and threw the broken wooden sword away before saying, All right, you said you wanted a recommendation to an academy, right? At her question, his expression grew tense as he replied, Yes, I heard you could do that. You could do. As soon as he finished speaking, Saria affirmed, Yes, of course I can recommend you to the most prestigious academy in the kingdom, the Royal Sword Arts Academy. After saying this, she paused for a moment, then hesitantly offered her opinion. But I advise you not to go there. For a moment her expression darkened. She lowered her voice and asserted once more, You are not suited for that place. Her words sent Ray's spirit plunging into a dark, silent abyss. He tightened his grip on the wooden sword, his mind filled with bitter thoughts. I know. It's because I'm not strong enough. After all, I couldn't really do anything except for that final moment. As if understanding his thoughts, she spoke up, shattering his disappointment. The place you should go is the World Union Academy. Her firm declaration so surprised him that his pupils constricted. Once again, she spoke, dispelling his confusion. She affirmed that this place he needed to go was not the most prestigious academy in the kingdom, but the most prestigious academy in the world. Her words made him jump in alarm. He thought, the World Union Academy. Isn't that where the Sword Saint and the others came from? Startled by this new information, he asked in a loud, excited voice, Can someone like me really get in there? Saria shook her head helplessly and said, No, you can't. She then began to explain Gray's current situation to him. You must have realized it yourself that your body as it is now is completely unqualified to be a swordsman. She wore a stern, appraising expression as she spoke seriously. If it were the Royal Academy, you might have been able to get by with your skills. But at the World Union Academy, that's impossible. How could you ever reach that level? And with such a weak body, he couldn't refute her harsh words. He stammered, Right. For a moment, his eyes filled with disappointment as heavy thoughts flooded his mind. All the people who get into that academy are actual monsters. With this body, I don't even stand a chance. In the soft light of the room, Saria's expression turned cold. She spoke coolly, her voice laced with disappointment. Giving up already? The entrance exam is still 9 months away, you know. Realizing how much time he had, Gray replied, flustered. Only 9 months, Saria agreed. Right, it probably isn't enough time. She then hesitated before affirming with a firm attitude. But, trust me, she growled menacingly. For these next 9 months, are you ready to endure hell? Ray looked down at his palm and replied vaguely, I don't want to endure hell. but I'll do it." Clenching his fist over his heart, Ray declared heroically, "For the next 9 months I'll be in your care." Hearing his firm answer, Saria smirked and spoke. "Good answer." The atmosphere suddenly fell silent. Ray trembled as he listened to Saria speak. "Well then." Saria's expression turned terrifying, her voice laced with menace. Let the days of hell begin, and she was a woman of her word. Right after that, images of Ray's grueling training days flashed by, mixed with Saria's stern attitude. In the memories, she was always yelling. Time flew by, and 8 months had passed. After a long period of training, Ray's body had become more toned. Seeing his current condition, Saria thoughtfully praised him. "You've gotten more robust." Pride was evident on her face. With her arms crossed, she gave a faint smile. "I have nothing left to teach you. From now on, walk your own path with confidence." Ray was momentarily stunned. A look of surprise appeared in his eyes as he asked, "But the exam is still a month away." Seeing his bewilderment, Saria opened her mouth to explain, "Taking an exam in an unfamiliar place will be difficult for you, so it's best to get there early." After explaining, she raised her hand, offering him a brown pouch. "This is money for your journey and enough food for a month." Sensing her formal tone, he awkwardly waved his hands, refusing. "But isn't leaving a whole month early a bit too soon?" The golden sunlight shone through the small window frames, elongating the shadows of the master and student. Ray expressed his thoughts. "It's like you're trying to kick me out of the village." A faint smile flickered across her lips, her eyes half closed. She calmly reassured him, "You're overthinking it." Suddenly, Ray mentioned something that startled Saria. "I heard a goblin nest was found nearby, and that there aren't many guards in the village." Hearing this, Saria didn't deny it, but gently replied, "Ah, yes. A nest was found," with a flustered expression from the surprise. She quickly turned away to avoid the topic, then calmly explained, "But it has nothing to do with us." She smiled faintly, feigning reassurance. "Reinforcements will come from the capital, so we don't need to worry." Then she quickly tried to soothe his anxiety. "Just go and take your exam." "Don't worry." As if he had predicted everything, Ray thought seriously. "She's lying. There won't be any reinforcements for the village, and before the village is destroyed, Master will lose her life." An image of Saria's blood-soaked body lying still on the ground flashed through Ray's mind along with the thought, "They said she was killed when she charged into the nest by herself." Even so, Ray acted as if he knew nothing and calmly replied, "I understand." His agreement came so easily that Saria found it a little hard to believe. In that instant, Ray placed a hand on his chest to express his gratitude. "Thank you, Saria." Ray used a resolute gaze filled with confidence as if to declare, "I'll be going now." Hearing this, Saria secretly let the corners of her lips curl into a smile that came from the bottom of her heart. Saria sent her blessings to her young student. "I hope you pass the exam." After Ray left, Saria quietly walked into the deep forest. The image of a night sky with a dim moon in the center appeared clearly, along with a dry skeleton with a sword plunged right through it. Touching a streak of blood on the ground, Saria mumbled, "According to the scout's report." Following the long trail of blood, she made her judgment. "They must be over there." Suddenly a voice broke the silent night, startling her. "Where are you going?" As the words faded, a familiar figure appeared on a high, dark tree branch. It was Ray. He put on a concerned face, feigning a question for his master. As Ray was moving, a loud voice suddenly called out his name from behind. "Ray!" He turned around and saw Saria. She spoke up, asking, "Why are you here? Shouldn't you be on your way to the academy?" Hearing that, he jumped down from the branch and said, "I should be the one asking you that. I thought you said the capital's forces would handle the goblin nest." Saria waved her hand and replied, "They said they couldn't come because of an emergency, so I plan to handle it myself." She added, "Besides, I'm more than enough on my own. Thanks to the scout's report, I know the strength of the forces in that nest." After she spoke, she let out a sigh. "Their boss is a high goblin, and in that nest there are a total of 40 to 50 monsters. I have to admit with those numbers it's a bit troublesome." He heard this and pondered, "A high goblin, huh? It's not that they're strong on their own." He recalled the battle and assessed, "A goblin's true strength lies in its cunning and leadership." He added, "If you get surrounded, fighting alone is no different from suicide." He continued to think, "And there's one thing I'm sure of." He looked at her and affirmed, "If Master goes alone, she won't come back alive and the village will be destroyed by them." He emphasized, "I've seen that future with my own eyes." Snapping out of his thoughts, he immediately spoke up, "Let me go with you." But Saria stopped him. I told you I'm enough on my own. Ray's gaze was incredibly determined. I don't want to miss a chance to gain real combat experience. Or, do you think I'll just get in your way? She explained, you know very well you wouldn't get in my way. I can barely even beat you in a sparring match anymore. She turned away slightly and continued, but who knows what will happen in a real battle, especially when a monster nest like this appears out of nowhere. She stated firmly, something this dangerous is best left until you have some real combat experience. But he remained incredibly resolute, his voice sharp and cold. So you really intend to go alone? In that case, I have an idea. She quickly asked, what is it? He stepped forward and said, I'll fight you. He quickly took her down, then let out a powerful statement. Then I'll handle the goblins myself. The space fell into silence. He was silent, and so was she. The sword in his hand was still pointed straight at her. She smiled faintly and replied, all right, I give up. She added a condition, but you have to promise me one thing. No matter what happens. She looked at him. You have to come back safely. Hearing this, he lowered his sword. Fine. I was planning on it anyway. With that, the two of them slowly advanced deeper into the forest. You too, Master, don't you go dying on me. Of course. The scene shifted to the goblin nest. The two of them walked and talked. This terrain doesn't leave any room for retreat. They're pretty confident building a nest in a place like this. He observed and assessed. We can't escape. The monsters we're facing this time are intelligent. We have to be extremely careful. She replied softly, I know, her eyes growing cold. The two of them quickly scouted the area. The boss was nowhere to be seen. It must be in the tent, they whispered. Hopefully we can thin their numbers before the boss appears. She whispered, Ray, take down every monster you see in that direction. They looked at the encampment teeming with goblins and discussed their strategy. I'll handle this side. The goblins looked absolutely hideous. Understood, he replied. Good, she said, with a final, let's go. The two of them charged forward. One of the goblins caught a scent. It spun around just as Saria lunged forward. With a single clean slice, she severed the monster's head. The goblin behind it witnessed this and growled with fury. The entire goblin horde erupted into chaos, then began to regroup and swarm towards them. On his side, Ray was just as formidable. He raised his sword and sliced down in one decisive stroke. The goblins didn't even have time to react. Blood splattered everywhere, making for a chaotic scene. Saria was not to be outdone fighting off a dense crowd of goblins. Ray then charged straight in, cutting down a group of them with a single slash. The two paused, surrounded by piles of bodies. She praised him. Not bad. Is this really your first time? He warned her. Be careful, Master. We're just getting started. He looked on confused. This is strange, he thought. They're too weak. If this is all they've got, Master could handle them herself. Then a thought struck him. Unless in that tent, his eyes darted to the tent in the distance. It felt as if a pair of glowing red eyes were watching their every move. A hideous pair of eyes. The sight sent a shiver down his spine. He turned and yelled to Saria. We have to go run, she asked calmly. What's wrong? But he was clearly losing his cool. Just run. Although confused, she trusted him and replied, all right. Then the two of them began running for their lives as a goblin chased after him. His eyes widened. Behind him now was an incredibly powerful-looking goblin. As its feet landed, dirt and rocks flew up. A twisted smile spread across his face. Under the high moon, in the dark of night, he said, a high-ranking goblin. She added, how honorable of the boss to come find us itself. But he suddenly screamed, no, that's not the boss! The real boss. A grotesque mouth gaped open wide behind them. A massive horde of goblins was now swarming in, growling and screaming wildly. She suddenly panicked. What is that? He spoke up. A creature even stronger than a high-ranking goblin. He stated firmly, a goblin general. He explained, that's the real boss as a mob of goblins advanced, carrying an axe with the boss following behind. That is the true boss of this lair. The boss was immensely larger and stronger. She finally snapped out of her shock. A goblin general. This isn't a type of monster we can handle. Her face twisted with turmoil. She screamed at the high-ranking goblin in front of them. Kill this one and then we run! She swung her sword at it. She struck again, and blood gushed from its arm. A hit! But before she could even celebrate, its arm suddenly began to regenerate. She was horrified. The wound! It's healing on its own! Ray rushed in, saying, "It's useless." He added, "The Goblin General's roar. It can boost the strength and recovery abilities of its allies." He stressed, "That's why they're all so abnormally strong." "It looks like we can't kill any of these goblins," he thought, still slashing as a plan formed in his mind. He said, "Master, I'm leaving the goblin behind you in your hands. You don't have to kill it, just buy me some time." Surprised, she turned to him. "What are you planning to do?" His expression was ice cold. "There's only one choice left, isn't there?" he said with a chilling tone. "To destroy that bastard." A sinister and arrogant smile crept onto his face. Ray swung his sword at the monster before him, thinking to himself, "How annoying that they keep trying to ambush me." He then slashed at the monster again. The beast didn't back down, immediately raising its axe to strike at Ray. As he parried, his mind was already calculating his next move. "Right now I just need to focus on destroying all the enemies in front of me." But in the next second, the unexpected happened. Ray's sword shattered into pieces as he swung it down. Ray stared at the hilt, and still in his hand, his face a mask of disbelief. "My sword couldn't withstand a single blow from an enhanced goblin." The goblin, however, wasn't patient enough to wait. Before Ray could recover, it immediately swung its axe down with great force, the impact knocking him backwards. He quickly drew his second sword to fight it. "Good thing I brought a spare," he thought, "but this one won't last long either." From a distance, Saria, who was also fighting goblins, shouted, "Ray, use my spare sword." Receiving the sword, Ray felt his strength surge. "Thanks." He held two swords in his hands, preparing for a life-or-death battle with the goblin. "Now I have two swords. But it's still not enough to wipe out all of these monsters." Looking at the Goblin General and the goblins standing between them, he sheathed one of his swords. He immediately lunged towards the goblin. A single large vertical slash should be more than enough, he thought. But the goblin refused to be beaten, swinging its axe straight at Ray's face. It wounded his cheek. Ray struggled to use his sword to block the goblin's axe blade, gritting his teeth with an impatient grunt. Immediately after, he drew another sword from behind his hip and fought with all his might against the goblins swarming him. A stream of light awakened from a horrifying skull. A goblin shrieked, its two eyes glowing with a yellow light. Ray was stunned by the sight before him. "What is that?" Following that, hordes of other goblins began to stir, so getting a power-up also strengthens them too. After being powered up, the goblin swung its axe toward Gray again. He could only try his best to resist its immense strength. "You saw through my plan!" the goblin leader roared. Instantly, tens of goblins rushed toward Gray. He thought to himself, "I guess that intelligence of yours isn't just for show." Gray's sword clashed against the goblin's sharp axe, sending small sparks flying everywhere. After a fierce struggle, Gray finally managed to break free from the goblin's axe. He backed up a bit to gain momentum, thought, "Charge!" and then flew swiftly through the goblins, who didn't even have time to realize what was happening. Ray tried to swing his sword to take down as many goblins as possible. "I don't have time to deal with all of them," he thought. But then suddenly, Gray was held back by a goblin. Another one flew in from somewhere, swinging its axe right at Gray, intending to finish him off. But it just crashed head-first into Gray's sword and died on the spot. He finally realized the goblin's plan. "They're trying to destroy my sword by throwing themselves at it." Gray suddenly looked up. Something had blocked the faint light from his face. The ferocious goblin was swinging a powerful fist towards Gray. However, he managed to block the attack with his sword, but Ray was still heavily affected by the force of that punch. He was thrown far away and dust clouded the air. Ray coughed up a mouthful of blood, his face covered in wounds. He slowly struggled to sit up amidst the shattered rubble around him. He couldn't help but groan in pain. He glanced at his last sword. "This is all I have left now." Ray slowly stood up, looking at the horde of goblins before him. Facing a whole pack and a goblin war chief with just one sword, Ray lowered his head slightly. "But based on my experiences before I regressed, I know I can't win," Ray admitted helplessly. Even knowing the outcome, Ray still raised his last sword. "In that case," he turned toward Saria and shouted, "Master, run!" "While they're focused on me, get out of here." Saria just smirked. She gripped her own sword tightly and replied, "Sorry, but I can't do that." Ray, trying to dodge the goblin's attacks, continued to plead with Saria. "Are you trying to die for nothing, Master? I'll follow right after you, don't worry about me." Saria slowly replied, "That's not it." Something flashed in Saria's eyes. Saria looked helplessly at the wound on her thigh. "I can't run anymore." Hearing this, Ray couldn't believe his ears. He looked back at her in despair, then glanced at the last sword in his hand. I'm out of options. Then he decided to fight the goblins in a life-or-death battle. I regressed to destroy the purgger. He desperately swung his chipped sword towards the goblin, hoping to put up some kind of a fight. But then he looked at the shattered fragments of his sword before him with a helpless expression. But now, it all ends. I'm in a place like this. Ray stood there with no weapon left to defend himself, letting the goblins surround him. But he still refused to give up, tightly clutching the hilt of his last sword. No, it's not over yet. If I can use the power from that time. He remembered a time in the past when he was cornered just like this. If I can just unleash it, even a whole horde won't matter. The blade had shattered into large fragments. Ray tried to force himself. Remember that feeling. Ray raised the sword, now just a short stub in front of him, and shut his eyes tightly. Suddenly, a red surge of power was finally awakened. Ray gently swung a single strike across the necks of all the goblins with the sword in his hand. It had transformed into a dense black aura. Saria was completely shocked. Ray stood there, his face covered in blood, but he looked at her with a bright smile as if to reassure her. It's okay now. Immediately after, Ray swung his sword relentlessly, causing the goblins to fall in droves. Even the strongest goblin was sliced in two. The goblin chieftain saw this and couldn't believe his eyes. Neither could Saria. She couldn't believe her own disciple could awaken such immense power. As for her, she only needed one hand to block the large axe from the goblin. She calmly turned and taunted it. Too light. A glint appeared in Saria's eyes, too. You things have given me quite a bit of trouble. Saria just flicked her hand, and the goblin was thrown backward by the force. Saria thought to herself, but without your war chief to buff your strength, you're nothing. It was past midnight. The two had finally defeated the entire goblin horde. Ray spoke up. Somehow, we managed to do it. He held out the broken sword. I'm sorry I broke your sword. Saria calmly replied, Don't worry, you saved my life. Then she reached out to take back the sword. But Ray, that attack just now. Before Saria could finish her sentence, Ray collapsed and lay motionless on the ground. Saria rushed over to check on him. She yelled, Ray! Ray slowly woke up. He wondered, where am I? He looked around and saw nothing but a thick black water. He looked at the thing in front of him. A door and a plume of black smoke suddenly appeared. Ray looked at the door floating before his eyes. This is... Then he realized. It's that power. The door in front of me is still emitting waves of black energy. If I open it, will I receive that power? Ray thought seriously, trying to make a decision for himself. Then he slowly took step after step toward the door. As soon as he touched it, Ray was seized by some kind of force. It made his entire body freeze instantly. Ray backed away, getting clear of the door. He clutched his chest, struggling to breathe. I don't know why. But I know for sure that if I open this door right now... A tear rolled down from the corner of Ray's eye. I will die. A notification appeared. Wise decision. At that moment, it was as if Ray had just awoken from something. His eyes flew wide open. Ray's mind had finally returned to reality. He opened his eyes, gasping for breath, and realized he was lying on a small bed. Saria looked at him and softly called his name, Ray. You're awake. Ray asked, Where am I? Saria stood beside his bed. This is the village infirmary. You've been unconscious for 5 days. I was afraid you weren't going to wake up again. Ray put a hand to his forehead, slowly accepting what was happening in reality. So I was asleep for 5 days. I must have overexerted myself. I think that affected my body. Saria replied, I don't think overexerted is the right word to describe what you did. Ray sat up. Saria asked with concern, Forget about that. Is your body okay? Can you get up? Ray answered, Let's see. Then he realized something was wrong with his body. I can't put any strength into my right arm. I can move it if I try really hard, but will I ever be able to hold a sword with this arm again? Then he saw the black marks on his bandaged arm. And what's more, this mark? Saria also noticed that he couldn't move his arm. It's not moving very well, is it? He wondered. Can't she see it? Then Ray answered Saria, It's hard to use my dominant arm. Saria replied as if she already knew the answer. Just as I thought, it won't heal normally anytime soon. I mean, all the bones in your right arm were shattered. Ray touched his arm all over. My bones were shattered, but it doesn't seem to hurt at all. Saria pointed to a vial on the table. We treated it with a magic potion. Ray was incredibly surprised to see the vial. A magic potion isn't that really expensive? Saria sat down on the opposite bed and reassured him. Don't worry, the village chief gave it to us. Ray was surprised by her words. The village chief? Why would he give it to someone like me? Saria replied with a hint of indignation. What are you talking about, Ray? You're this village's hero. Ray heard this but still didn't understand what she was talking about. Suddenly, a silver-haired man threw the door open with great force and shouted his name, Ray! Ray was quite flustered to see the village chief. He clutched the potion vial in his hand. Chief, thank you for the magic potion. The other man quickly cut him off. We're the ones who should be thanking you. We're talking about a goblin general here. That's a monster that couldn't be harmed even when all the forces from the surrounding towns gathered to fight it. A monster like that was targeting our village. The village chief rushed to the bedside and tightly grasped Ray's hand. If you hadn't killed it, the village would have been destroyed. At this point, he used both hands to clasp Ray's. Without you, Saria, and this potion, this infirmary, and even the lives of the villagers you saved, none of it would still exist. Hearing this, Ray replied, flustered, You're exaggerating, sir. The village chief continued to show his gratitude. Ray, you know I'm not exaggerating. Ray looked down at the magic potion in his hand, thinking to himself, Maybe the chief is right. In the world before I turned back time, this village was supposed to have been destroyed by the goblin attack. The village chief stood up and bowed respectfully. If you still don't realize the significance of what you've done, then I would be happy to explain it to you in detail. Pausing for a moment, he continued, I was told you'll be taking the entrance exam for the World Federation Academy. Is that correct? Ray answered, bewildered, yes. He suddenly realized something, then held his chin in deep thought. I went to kill goblins a week before the exam. If I've been asleep for 5 days, that means there are only 2 days left. Ray's expression became even more serious. It's a 3-day walk from here to the World Federation Academy. I could get there in 1 day on horseback, but I don't have that kind of money. At this thought, Ray quickly turned to the village chief and asked loudly, I'm sorry, Chief. Could I possibly borrow a horse? The village chief turned and walked outside. As he went, he said, I knew you'd say that. So I've already prepared the best horse in the village for you. With that horse's speed, you'll get there in no time. Saria, who was standing to the side, added, If you hadn't woken up today, we were planning to carry you there. Ray slowly got off the bed and reached out to open the door, letting in the natural light from outside. Then he realized a surprise was waiting for him. Ray stepped outside, and before him were hundreds of villagers standing and cheering to celebrate his recovery. Everyone held up a banner, cheerfully shouting, Thank you. You have to pass the exam. Another person said, Thank you for saving the entire village. A man approached him. He handed him a small pouch. Ray, please take this. He reached out, took the small cloth pouch, and asked, What is this? The man replied, It's something the whole village pitched in for you. We heard the registration fee for the World Federation Academy is very expensive. Ray was suddenly at a loss for words. Everyone, thank you all so much. He got ready to leave. Before going, he said to everyone, Well, if I fail the exam now, it'll be hard for me to ever come back. Hearing that, Saria quickly reassured him, Don't worry. She turned to look at him with a confident expression. Who among the applicants at the World Federation Academy could possibly defeat a goblin general? Even so, Gray was still a bit insecure. He raised a hand to touch his own immobile arm. But with my right arm like this now, Saria, still full of confidence, comforted Ray. Your left arm still works just fine, doesn't it? Ray tested his left hand. Yes, but, Saria cut him off. That's more than enough. You won't even need to use that power. Ray turned to get on his horse. But the entrance exam probably won't be so easy that I can pass with just one arm. Saria moved closer to Ray. It'll be fine. The Academy's examiners aren't so blind they'd overlook your abilities. I guarantee it. She looked him straight in the eye, her voice full of confidence. You will definitely pass. Ray felt a surge of strength. Thank you so much. After you've said that, now I really can't fail. This village was destroyed in the previous world, but it still exists here now. This world is no longer the same as the old one. The future can be changed with this power. Ray looked back at the villagers one last time and said his goodbyes. I'm leaving now. Not long after Gray arrived at the exam location, he stroked his horse. Thanks, pal. Thanks to you, I made it just in time. Gray looked at the vast castle before him. So that's the World Federation Academy. Before Gray's eyes stood the massive building of the World Federation Academy. It loomed majestically against the clear blue sky. An examiner's voice suddenly rang out. We will now begin distributing the exam papers. Until this process is complete, All candidates must remain in the central arena. The moment the examiner finished speaking, a wave of murmurs broke out among the people below. Are all of us candidates? But only about 20 of us will pass. Someone else was discussing past exams. I heard the number of successful candidates changes a lot each year. Some years they take 50 people and some years only one passes. Once again, the examiner's voice rang out, cutting through the noise from below. And now may I present Professor Ariel. Without keeping everyone waiting, a figure with long red hair appeared before the amazed crowd. With a mysterious smile, she spoke, "Let's begin right away. We will now begin distributing the exam papers. Candidates, please take the paper that appears in front of you." Suddenly, she snapped her fingers and a strange golden light appeared high above. In front of Gray, a sheet of paper gradually materialized from that mysterious golden light. Gray quickly reached out to take it. All of a sudden, his information appeared on the paper. Candidate number 513. Seeing that everyone had received their paper, Professor Ariel called down from above. It seems everyone has theirs now. Some of you may be surprised to see that nothing is written on it, except for your number and your assigned section. Rest assured it's like this every year. Moreover, the professor seriously affirmed the rules of the exam. The World Federation Academy does not discriminate based on age, gender, nationality, status, or anything else. She reached out, gripped the edge of the lectern, and said decisively, "Not even your name." Then, with a dark smile, she continued, "Matters to us." The Academy's entrance appeared majestically, in the middle of the path, her voice echoing with its appearance. "Only those who pass the exam and earn the right to cross that bridge will be asked their name. You can even give us a fake one if you wish." Looking at the exam paper in his hand, Gray thought with dissatisfaction, "I left my sword back at the inn. So why does it say I'm still in the swordsmanship section? What kind of system is this?" As if knowing what everyone was thinking, Ariel spoke with a conceited air. "Furthermore, I assigned your sections based simply on my observation of you." She then said coldly in a threatening tone, "If I was mistaken, please raise your hand." Hearing the professor's declaration, everyone grew uneasy and began to object. "She chose our sections just by looking at us. She must be joking, right? There's no way she could do that with this many people." Then they came to their own conclusions as if they knew for sure. "They must have checked up on us beforehand, or maybe she used some kind of mind-reading magic on us." Seeing no one raise their hand, the professor looked pleased. "It seems no one is in the wrong section. The waiting period is over." She then provided instructions for those about to take the exam. "Next, I will announce your exam schedule. Please check your ticket." Ray immediately looked at the exam paper in his hand for information about his test. A line of black text appeared on the paper. Candidate number 513, Swordsmanship section, day 1:11 a.m. Seeing the information on the paper, he was shocked and silently cursed. "Damn it! My test is on the very first day. I was hoping for a little more time for my arm to heal." After a long silence, the professor put on a terrifying expression and looked down at the crowd with grim seriousness. "A warning and a stern reminder. This is a one-time practical exam. If you are late, you will be automatically disqualified. Make sure you are on time. We will also not accept any personal requests to change the schedule." Meanwhile, Gray clutched his arm, worrying endlessly. He still couldn't put much strength into his dominant arm. "Please heal by tomorrow, even just a little." The next day came in a flash. Arriving at the exam site, Gray looked at his injured arm, his panic growing. It hadn't healed at all. "I guess I'll have to take the test with my arm like this." Suddenly, the examiner's voice rang out, snapping Ray out of his thoughts and causing him to just mumble in agreement. "Next examinee, please wait at the arena entrance." Trying to compose himself, Ray took a deep breath, comforting himself. "I'm okay. No, I shouldn't be pessimistic about this right now." He held his right hand and thought, "My left arm is working perfectly fine and I can still move my right arm to some degree." After regaining his composure, he quickly thought about how to pass the test. "I need to use the time I have left to observe the examiner's movements. Find an opening." Before his eyes, a sword fight between the examiner and an examinee unfolded. The examiner spoke up. "You can make the first move." Without hesitation, the examinee replied, "All right." After saying that, he immediately charged at the examiner with a yell, striking the wooden floor with his sword, creating a loud noise and a thick cloud of white smoke. As the thick white smoke began to clear, the examiner appeared standing completely still and unfazed. The examinee saw that he wasn't harmed in the slightest. He shouted with determination, "I'm not done yet!" As soon as the words left his mouth, he furiously put all his strength into his sword and swung to slash at the examiner. However, when he saw the examiner, Oh, still easily parry his sword strike, he panicked and said, "Impossible." In a flash, his sword was suddenly knocked away by the examiner. He and his sword were sent flying. He slammed onto the wooden floor with such force that it let out a loud bang. Clutching his arm in pain, unable to stand, his face went pale with disbelief. Before he could even process it, a cold voice snapped him back to reality. "Your exam is over. You may retrieve your weapon and leave the premises." Hearing this, the examinee's face fell with disappointment, and he mumbled, "Understood." Witnessing what had just happened, Gray's lip twitched. He immediately froze on the spot, his mind crumbling. "I'm so screwed." Then the examiner's voice rang out, pulling him from his daze. "Next number, 513. With a serious face, he answered yes and thought to himself, "And you're telling me to fight a man who just defeated a guy bigger than him?" As if on cue, the examiner began the match with the same words as before. "You may make the first move." Hearing this, Gray replied seriously, but even standing in the arena, he couldn't stop trembling inside as he tried to console himself. "Honestly, I don't feel like I have any chance at all, but I'll still do everything I can." Shaking off his rambling thoughts, he gripped his sword and charged straight at the examiner, letting out a yell. "Here I come." As he charged, he recalled Saria's words. "A sword isn't swung with just your arm. You channel the power generated from your whole body through your arm." With newfound determination and self-belief, Ray decided to trust in the hope Saria had given him. "That's what you taught me, isn't it, teacher? Even if my right arm is useless." "If I can channel the power through my other muscles." In a flash, he swung his sword, but the blade cut through the air, missing the examiner. A contradiction started to form in his mind. "But I can't fight the way I usually do. If it were that easy to swing a sword without using arm strength, no one would bother training their bodies in the first place." The examiner suddenly swung his sword at Gray. As he watched the blade's movement, "Oh." In the examiner's hand, he slowly realized something. The examiner's sword. It's a bit slow. Having spotted this weakness, he was able to parry the blade. As they fought, he pondered, searching for a solution. "He has monstrous strength, but his speed and technique are nowhere near my teacher's. If I rely on the sword style she taught me, I can compensate for the difference in arm strength." Having found a solution, his train of thought was cut short by action. In that case, he began using a series of small, fast strikes against the examiner, which confirmed that his deduction was correct. That's right. He's definitely slower. Caught off guard by the unexpected strikes, the examiner grimaced in frustration. Ray, however, remained in a state of high concentration. Ray judged thoughtfully, "He's not as strong as I thought." Saria's familiar radiant smile appeared in his mind along with her confident words. "You'll definitely pass." Right now, he only remembered Saria in her role as his teacher. Her encouragement gave Gray renewed strength and belief. With a look of sheer determination on his face, he poured all of his strength into his next move and succeeded in knocking the examiner's sword away. With his heart pounding, he thought, "I think we can actually do this." The fight between them grew incredibly fierce, a true battle of speed. The examiner's attacks were relentless, never ceasing, and Ray was forced onto the defensive. Ray was still at a clear disadvantage, even though he'd grasped his opponent's weakness. "Even though I've seen through his sword style," Ray gripped his sword, preparing to counter. Then, without hesitation, he aimed for the examiner's shoulder, but the man's experience allowed him to dodge it with ease. Ray began to hesitate, but had no intention of giving up. He thought grimly, the difference in strength is still too big. "I can't break through his form. It's not going to be easy to win with just one arm." Ray kept attacking, moving at his top speed. The examiner slowly started to reveal an opening, and Ray quickly assessed the situation. That being said, his movements are getting cruder. It's risky, but if I do it now... Without another thought, Ray abruptly pulled his sword back, causing the examiner to lose his balance. "My plan is ready. Let's do this." Just as I predicted, he charged forward. A confident look appeared in his eyes. He fell for it. The instructor's swing was too strong and predictable. I fell back into a defensive stance. Nothing reveals an opening more than a big, reckless attack like that. But instead of blocking, I swiftly moved behind the instructor, making him panic. Seeing the instructor on the defensive, Ray rejoiced inwardly. No matter how big the power gap is, as long as I can get behind him. Relying on his speed, Ray charged forward. The referee's voice echoed, "Stop! Just a little more time and he could have landed a hit on his opponent." The sword's blade was only a short distance away from the instructor's body, separated by a thin layer of clothing. Ray couldn't accept it. His body was exhausted. The match is over already. Isn't it a bit too early to stop? The referee standing on the platform announced the result of the match. Time is up. With this, the result is a draw. Ray was crestfallen when he heard the result. He stood there stunned and helpless, knowing he couldn't change anything. I didn't make it in time. He gripped his sword trembling, but then relaxed and accepted it. Ray resignedly turned and left the arena, telling himself, I tried my best, but if I can't even beat him, I'm going to have a lot more trouble down the line. Full of regret, Ray looked back at the arena, a deep sadness in his heart. Thank you, instructor. 1 week after the match. In meeting room number 53 of the World Alliance Academy. In the spacious room were 6 members of the organizing committee, the ones in charge of evaluations. The old man with glasses was the school's headmaster. What do you all think of the candidates now that they've completed the exam? The brown-haired man replied with a tired indifference. Beside him, an older instructor cautiously offered his opinion. I find this method of having everyone observe at once to be rather inefficient. It would be better to divide the work next year. The man with the mustache in the room was only focused on his own interests. We can't afford to miss out on talent just to save ourselves some effort. The headmaster felt helpless at the members' apathy. I was asking for your opinions on the students, not the examination system. Let's start with the swordsmanship training course. Small screens began to appear on the desk. Someone asked, who passed? The same instructor from before continued his careful analysis, taking in everyone's opinions. As usual, anyone who defeated an examiner passes. The rest are judged based on the quality of their performance and their ability to hold out for 15 minutes. What do the swordsmanship course instructors think? Besides those who defeated the examiner's candidates number 5, 217 and 753 stood out the most. The brown-haired man interjected, just keep the list at that. Even if the others pass, they won't be able to keep up with the classes anyway. The man with the mustache readily agreed, as it was to his benefit. I agree. Does anyone have a different opinion? The entire room fell silent, not a single response. The headmaster spoke up. We have now confirmed the list of successful candidates for the swordsmanship course. Suddenly, someone raised a point. What about candidate number 513? The suggestion caught his attention. It came from the red-haired woman who had been silent up until now. What does everyone think about candidate number 513? The man with the round sunglasses remained silent. The gloomy-looking man asked with curiosity, Number 513, huh? The man with the mustache opened the screen of Ray's match to review it. This kid looks like he was about to win, but if he has to rely on setting traps to beat an examiner, he'll have trouble keeping up later. His technique is excellent, but his strength is still too weak. I think he was completely overwhelmed from start to finish. The headmaster pondered. If that's the case, then... The red-haired girl, Gray, quickly suppressed the thought of adding anything, sighing helplessly as she looked at the crowd. It exasperated her. How could so many people be watching, yet not a single one noticed? If everyone is this oblivious, then this whole everyone observing approach really is a waste of time. The discussion came to an end. The next day, everyone came to get their results. Riley was there, too. He held the notice in his hand. Applicant number 513, swordsmanship course, first day, 11 a.m. at the clock tower. Then a voice from the loudspeaker echoed, We will now announce the list of successful applicants for the swordsmanship course. In total, 6 applicants have been accepted. Riley held his notice, his heart full of anticipation. Here we go. For those who are accepted, the paper will automatically ignite. Applicant number 5. Applicant number 217. Applicant numbers 432 and 615, applicant numbers 753 and 925. That is all. These 6 applicants have been accepted. Riley froze. He fell into despair. The announcement continued. Successful applicants, please cross the bridge and complete your enrollment procedures today. The atmosphere was now chaotic, a mix of joy, sorrow, and regret. Riley thought mournfully, so I really failed. The loudspeaker blared again. Next, the announcement for the Divine Eye Special Admission applicant number 513. Unlike the others who were accepted, Riley's paper was consumed by a blue flame. Suddenly, he became the center of the crowd's attention. Looking at the burning paper, Riley was still in disbelief. Did I really pass? People around him started to whisper, mostly with scorn. The Divine Eye Special Admission, huh? So they're using that method again this year. Riley's mind raced with questions. Divine Eye Special Admission, this is the first I've ever heard of it. The taunts didn't stop, especially from the applicants who had passed. Isn't that just a fancy way of saying he got in through the back door? The World Alliance Academy has really gone downhill. The words seeped into his mind, distracting Riley. The back door. How? But I don't know anyone here. Could it be because of my master? But he never mentioned anything. From the crowd, an old man with a cane stepped forward, rebuking those with such misguided thoughts. Hey, don't you dare speak so carelessly about the Divine Eye Special Admission. It is a prestigious category that has produced heroes for the last 100 years. They paid the old man no mind. Old geezers are really obsessed with the Divine Eye thing. Isn't that just some glorious story from the old days? Besides that, there were other whispers. All the recent Divine Eye admissions have been complete failures. Annie Whitebell on Bright Leakemuller and Jacob Bloomfield, too. Riley didn't fight back. He endured it silently, listening to their scorn. That's right, they were all failures. Even the current applicants know about it. Those names flashed through Riley's mind, sparking a sense of familiarity and a glimmer of hope. Annie White. Those three. They were part of the main force that fought against Liquid Ether. And now, my name is being mentioned alongside theirs. Morning light gently blanketed the entire academy. Everything seemed submerged in a soft, tranquil glow. The main building appeared majestic amidst a thin mist. The surrounding canal flowed peacefully as a bustling crowd of people entered. The school's loudspeaker chimed, "The entrance ceremony will begin in 30 minutes. If you have finished changing into your uniforms, please gather at the plaza in front of the main office." Groups of students in the academy's uniform began to appear on the paths. Their dark blue jackets with gold trim stood out in the morning light. On their left breast, the academy's silver emblem gleamed. Amidst the stream of students moving towards the plaza, one figure stood out more than the rest. Riley walked with a calm demeanor, exuding a cold and inscrutable aura. A few students started to gather, some looking around awkwardly. One whispered to a friend just to be sure they were in the right place. "The plaza in front of the main office? This is it, right?" The other student looked just as lost. "There's nothing here. Are we even in the right place?" Suddenly, a figure came rushing towards the group of students, his voice mixed with tired, heavy breaths. Sorry about that. There was a bit of a mix-up, so the preparations are delayed." A student asked, "Preparations?" He immediately continued, "Could I trouble you all to step back a bit so I can place the stage right there?" Everyone looked at each other, confused by his request. The students backed away as he asked, "Is this about far enough?" He turned back to the crowd and smiled. "That's perfect." Amidst their surprise and confusion, he knelt in the middle of the schoolyard, pressed his palm to the ground, and muttered, "All right, then." A brilliant magic circle engulfed the entire area. Intricate, interwoven lines of magic radiated a dazzling golden light, like an exploding sun, as streaks of orange-red lightning shot through the light. It created an intense, supernatural feeling. The ground trembled. The air felt compressed by an immense energy on the verge of erupting. The onlookers could only stare wide-eyed, awestruck by a power beyond their comprehension. In an instant, it all vanished. The sky was clear as if after a storm. He stood up abruptly before the stunned crowd. He glanced at them calmly, as if nothing had happened. "Sorry for the delay. You can all take a seat anywhere you'd like." The students still couldn't believe their eyes, their lips trembling in shock. Yes, sir." They glanced around, trying to process what they'd just seen. One thought in a panic, that was a teleportation spell, right? Another gritted his teeth in amazement. "They can teleport something this big." Riley sat calmly on a chair, thinking to himself, they must want to hold the entrance ceremony in a place with a view of the school. But what a wasteful use of a teleportation spell. He looked up, a radiant smile on his face, as if he'd discovered something. "So this is the power of the World Alliance Academy." Riley suddenly noticed two people talking to each other. "There are way too many chairs here, aren't there? Especially if there are only 30 students who were accepted. Why would we need this many?" The short-haired girl gave a wry smile. "You don't know about that." The other girl looked a bit offended. "Sorry, okay, I don't know much about anything besides swordsmanship." The short-haired girl smiled. "Then let me explain." She twirled her finger in time with her words. "The World Alliance Academy, just as its name suggests, is a gathering place for the best students from all over the world." Suddenly, she exclaimed, "Look, they're here!" Startled, the other girl looked in the direction she was pointing. Her eyes widened in utter amazement. Before her, an unbelievable sight unfolded in the vast blue sky. Colossal airships gliding silently through the clouds. Their sleek hulls reflected the faint morning light, their full sails catching the wind. They looked like majestic flying warships interspersed among hot air balloons. And there were giant winged creatures, dragons with massive bodies soaring on outstretched wings. She cried out at the dreamlike sight, What is this? The airship flew towering and majestic. Ray stared in awe. The magic airship, Strato Queen. I was on it once when I joined the squad that hunts the purifiers. I heard this is one of the largest airships in the world, and they're using it just for the entrance ceremony, truly worthy of the name World Alliance Academy. As the airships landed, kicking up clouds of dust, the crowd proceeded to the assembly point, their faces stern and focused. The headmaster, pleased to see everyone, leaned on the railing and began to speak. It seems everyone is here. In that case, let us begin the entrance ceremony. A voice boomed from the school's speakers. Thank you, headmaster, for your speech. Ray sat with his arms crossed, yawning. So this is the World Alliance Academy's entrance ceremony. Not much different from any other. Then he glanced over in surprise as the next name was called. Next, a greeting from the top student of each department. Leon H., top of the swordsmanship department, please come forward to speak. He stood and bowed politely. Yes. Leon H. descended the steps surrounded by the admiring whispers of the crowd. Hey, that's him. The one who beat an examiner in a single blow during the entrance exam. That's the one. I heard his swordsmanship is on par with the instructors. Leon Haros bowed deeply, his hand over his chest as he greeted the professors. That's Leon H. Appius, a truly outstanding student. His face radiated a serious and dignified aura. Ray sighed, lost in thought. Leon H. politely asked, If I may ask again, am I free to speak my mind? The professor smiled. Of course. Upon receiving approval, he gave his thanks and then turned sharply to face the seated students. I have something I wish to say, first to my fellow students. No. To all of you who were admitted through the proper channels, it is an honor to be enrolled here with you. He placed a hand over his chest, a gesture of sincerity. He continued, So that we may graduate and become people who can contribute to the world, let us all strive to do our best together. I truly look forward to the days we will spend advancing together as students of this prestigious academy. However, it's a pity that among us there is one who does not deserve to be here. Isn't that right? His gaze fell on Professor Ariel. She had her eyes closed, enjoying the bustling atmosphere. When she suddenly heard her name called, she was startled for a moment, but quickly composed herself and replied, All the students here have passed a rigorous entrance exam. While they may not be as strong as you, it would be unreasonable to expel them. And why are you asking me this? Leon H.'s expression hardened. His eyes filled with indignation. I'm not talking about those who passed the exam fairly. I'm talking about the student you showed favoritism to. And admitted through special recommendation, the student who got in through favoritism, he shouted, pointing at the crowd of students. Step forward! Return your uniform and leave this academy at once. The students burst into an uproar at Leon H.'s words. Ray felt a knot of anxiety. Man, why is he being so intense? Then again, it's a good thing he doesn't know what I look like. If I just keep quiet, he probably won't spot me, right? Ariel let out a laugh. It seems this year's freshmen are quite a lively bunch, aren't they? Professor, I am being serious. I'm asking you to stop admitting students through backdoor deals. And then a whoosh, as light as a breeze. Ariel's voice was suddenly much closer. In the next instant, she was right behind Leon H., whispering, Do you think you're stronger than that student? Leon H.'s shout echoed, What? He gritted his teeth in frustration. Of course I am. Do you think I'm wrong? Ariel laughed, amused. Now that's the attitude I like to see? Then let's make a bet. Leon H. was taken aback. A bet? Ariel crossed her arms, unnervingly calm. That's right. Her lips curled into a confident smirk. I'm betting my entire position as a professor, and his enrollment. Ray was stunned by her words. He choked for a moment before asking the person next to him. A wager! Saria, equally confused, asked, Professor Ariel, are you telling me to fight that brat who got in on a recommendation? Ariel waved a dismissive hand without opening her eyes. I wouldn't do something so crude. Then she adjusted her glasses, her eyes snapping open to look straight at Saria. Besides, if he were to go all out, you would die. As a teacher, I can't allow a student to be put in danger. Veins slowly began to throb on Saria's forehead as his expression darkened. Glaring furiously, he asked, Are you provoking me? Ariel's attitude didn't change. Her voice remained calm in the face of his anger. I am being serious. That's why we should use monsters for the bet instead of people. It'll be safer that way. She paused for a moment, then added, Besides, you're better at fighting monsters than people, aren't you? Saria grew even angrier. So you've done your research on me. Then what exactly is the bet? Ariel gave a faint smile, as if her goal was already achieved. Suddenly, a hand shot up. Ariel continued speaking up. It's simple. You just have to kill the monster I select as the target. The professor went on to explain the rules. With each round, the monster would be stronger. Whoever failed to kill the target first would lose. Ray sat in his seat, rubbing his head in exasperation. Ariel continued laying out the stakes. If he loses, I will resign from my position, and all specially admitted students will be expelled. However, if you lose, you will have to follow my every command. Saria's defiant expression was reflected in Ariel's glasses. She acted as if she hadn't noticed, and held out her hand in front of him. Well, he put his hand on the hilt of the sword at his hip. Tell me the targets first, although I'm confident I can handle any opponent. I don't want to get caught in some stupid trap. Ariel put a hand to her chin and began to consider. Let's see. For the first target, how about an ogre general? Or is that too easy for you? All the students in the hall were stunned when they heard the pair's first target. Ray, sitting in his chair, crossed his arms and carefully considered it. An ogre general. Why did she choose that one specifically? Unlike him, Saria couldn't hold back his anger and slammed the table. Are you kidding me? Sweat beaded on his forehead. An ogre general isn't the kind of monster a single person can take down on their own. Ariel remained calm, smiling gently at his reaction. I never said you had to kill it immediately. We'll set the time limit for within this year. That's reasonable, isn't it? Saria continued to shout. If someone could take down a disaster-class monster alone with just 1 year of training, then people wouldn't be struggling anymore. Pick something more realistic. After speaking, he paused for a moment and then let out a pained sigh. Immediately after, a smile started to spread across his face. I see. He clenched his fist as if he'd just realized something. You deliberately chose a monster that no one can defeat just to end the bet with no winner, didn't you? I won't agree to that. Ariel stepped closer to Saria. Then let's add one more condition. If it's a draw, you win. Hearing this, he was completely shocked. Huh, Ariel continued. In other words, if that kid fails to defeat the ogre general, I will be automatically dismissed and all specially admitted students will be expelled. She gave Saria a mischievous wink. So how about it? Saria looked at her terrified and confirmed, Are you insane? I have a feeling the outcome of this bet is already set in stone. Right after that, Ariel turned and walked away. She continued to smile. Then I'll take it that you have no more objections. Saria kept adding conditions to be safe. It has to be a completely untouched ogre general, not one that's been weakened or anything like that, got it? Ariel held out her hand and a stream of light slowly materialized. Of course. She waved her hand and a pen appeared along with a blank sheet of paper. I have recorded all the details in this magical contract. The contract floated in front of Saria. If you have no issues, then sign it. He thought for a moment, carefully reading the contract, and then he put the pen to the paper. I'm in. After signing, Saria still wanted to ask one more thing. Do you really believe that kid can win? Ariel paid him no mind and turned to leave. Who knows? Ariel returned to her seat and calmly sat down. After she left, the people in the hall began to whisper amongst themselves about the contract. What's wrong with Professor Ariel? You think that old hag is using the bet as an excuse to retire? Could be. She's been washed up for ages anyway. Ariel ignored the sarcastic comments around her, still smiling as she looked at the contract in her hand. Ray, sitting in his chair, sighed in resignation. He thought to himself, just great, the bet has officially begun. Suddenly, he opened his eyes carefully, considering something. Wait a minute, why? I have a feeling she factored the one I defeated before enrolling into that line about the time limit being within this year. Ariel also noticed his gaze. Ray was staring intently at her. He was still thinking it through. So the bet was decided from the very beginning. Ariel raised an index finger to her lips, signaling him not to reveal the truth. Ray marveled. She really plays dirty. The teacher on the platform calmly began the class lecture. Now then, we will begin the introductory lesson on magic. He placed a book on the desk and continued, Some of you may be surprised that the lecture is starting on the very first day, but as students of this academy, you must remember not to waste even a single day. Starting with the most basic thing. He raised his hand and a blue light emanated from it, how to use magic. After that, the teacher continued to lecture on how to use magic. Within our bodies exists an invisible energy source called ether. By guiding it through the magic circuits in your bodies, you can... The teacher lectured intently on the platform, and below the students listened seriously. Ray sat in the back thinking to himself, I was worried I wouldn't be able to keep up with the class, but it seems to be okay for now. I already learned all this stuff at the training camp. The problem now is, His gaze shifted toward something. Ray looked towards the blonde-haired person sitting in the very front row of the class. I ended up in the same class as him, out of all the classes I could have been assigned to. He rested his cheek on his hand, exasperated. Please don't let anyone find out I'm a specially admitted student. Suddenly a voice cut through his train of thought. Hey, you there, you look bored. It hasn't even been 5 minutes and you're already looking away. You've got some nerve. Ray stammered in surprise. I'm sorry. He thought to himself, he noticed me just by glancing over, but I'm sitting all the way in the back. The professor closed the book in his hands. If you're so confident, why don't you show the class something I assume you know basic magic, right? A flustered Ray stood up to explain. With all due respect, Professor, we're in the swordsmanship course. I thought it was okay if we didn't know magic. Still holding the thick book, he reminded him, even if you only use a sword in a real battle, you still need to know basic magic to coordinate with mages. You have to feel and understand what it's like to control ether. Ray didn't know how to respond. He froze for a moment. This is exactly what they taught us at the training camp. If so, does that mean the spell we're about to learn is also the same? Immediately after he replied to the instructor, is the spell we're about to learn the ether bullet? The instructor had returned to his lectern. Oh, you know of it. Can you use it? Ray answered. Yes. He quietly let out a sigh of relief. It felt like I just dodged a bullet. Phew! That hellish training camp wasn't for nothing after all. The man continued, this is a good opportunity. I'll turn this into a match. Leon, you can use the ether bullet too, can't you? Leon stood up and answered his question. Of course. Leon continued. In that case, Professor, I was trained in both swordsmanship and magic before I even enrolled. Isn't this a little too risky? If I make him actually fight me? The instructor stood firm in his decision. Even with a huge skill gap, you're only using the ether bullet. He won't die. And I'm not telling you to go easy on him, but that gray-haired kid is this year's student admitted by special recommendation. Hearing this, Leon was stunned. Huh. After the instructor's announcement, everyone in the class turned in unison to look at Ray with equally surprised eyes. Ray, receiving so much attention from the other students, was also extremely flustered. He looked at the professor's calculating eyes. He just told everyone everything. Leon slammed his hand on the table. So that's how it is. In that case, I'll have to teach him a proper lesson. He turned around, his eyes filled with irritation. I'll show him what kind of place this academy is. Then he looked at Ray and growled out each word. Get out on the platform! Ray was speechless at this. The two students stepped onto the lecture platform facing each other. The professor stood in the middle and began to explain the rules. All right, on my signal. Fire an ether bullet at your opponent. Ray looked quite wary. I only learned magic for a few days at the training camp, even though the professor said I won't die. It doesn't look like I'll get out of this unscathed. After he finished speaking, the professor yelled, Begin! Leon began to summon his magic. He challenged him, I'll show you the difference in our power. Ray didn't back down, trying to summon the best magic he possibly could. I have no choice. I have to go all out. Just then, the two orbs of power flew towards each other. However, something unexpected happened that made neither of them believe their eyes. They both shouted in unison, What? The light began to move, preparing to charge straight at Leon, forcing him to jump back to dodge. Leon retreated in a panic, his eyes wide as he screamed. In his terror, just as the stream of light was about to hit a man, suddenly rushed forward, spreading his arms to shield him and block the blow, his face showing sheer determination amidst the intense light. Instantly, the space flashed brightly. Saria was nearly frozen in her seat, only able to stare wide-eyed at the scene before her. That was close. He breathed a sigh of relief. He gently wiped the beads of sweat that were still dotted on his face. The source of light was nearly shattering, with large cracks appearing across its glaring surface. Suddenly, a young man fearlessly and forcefully leaped down into that blinding light. A powerful gust of wind from his passing made the entire hall tremble and cover their faces. In less than 5 minutes, Saria had fallen flat on the floor, screaming in pain. The man rushed over like the wind to check on Leon. Are you all right? Leon's body was trembling as he tried to look up at the man before him. Leon pushed himself up. Trying to wipe the metallic taste of blood from the corner of his mouth, he replied softly, I'm fine. The man didn't ask anything else, just nodded and said, I see, thank goodness. But his eyes remained as sharp as ice. He looked around with suspicion and high alert. If it weren't for the barrier dampening the impact, he would have been killed. Perhaps the recent collision had left the room in ruins, feeling more suffocating with a thick layer of dust all around. Not even one of the professors could fire an ether bullet that powerful. He tilted his head with a furious expression and yelled, "What did you just do?" Ray didn't answer immediately. He just looked down at the palm of his hand for a while, frowning as he thought about something. He thought to himself, it's this weak. This is clearly not the same type of spell I've used before. His pupils immediately constricted. Could it be that the ether bullet I learned in the suppression squad is different from the one they teach at the academy? He clenched his fist, his red eyes burning with frustration. He placed a hand over his chest in a respectful gesture and politely asked the man before him, "Did I use the wrong spell?" The man sighed helplessly and replied, "No, it was definitely an ether bullet, but the quality of yours was on another level. What you just used wasn't a normal ether bullet, but a power-type hyper-compressed ether." It was clear that this was a powerful form of energy, hidden within the orb that emitted a powerful light. The people in the hall couldn't help but murmur among themselves, and a series of questions were raised. "Hyper-compressed ether? I've never heard of that before." The man immediately answered, "That is a form of energy that even we professors find extremely difficult to create. And yet in that instant, you formed it and turned it into a spell. There is no one else in this academy who could replicate what you just did." As soon as he finished, the crowd continued to murmur, "That's the first time I've ever seen an eager bullet that powerful. Could it be that the Divine Eye recruitment was all to prepare for this? Then they should have put him in the magic course from the start, instead of giving him a special admission," he thought to himself. No way. But all the spells the suppression team learned at the training camp were like this. Among them, I was actually one of the least talented. Because I lacked talent, I was always the first to fall in every battle. He asked with a serious face, "Professor, are you kidding me?" "Professor, anyone could do it with the right training." The corner of the professor's mouth curled up. Riley was stunned, still not understanding what he was laughing about, which only made the professor burst out laughing, so heartily that his eyes crinkled. Riley was practically frozen in place, just standing there, dumbfounded, still not understanding what was happening. Suddenly, the professor leaned in close and proposed, making it impossible for him to resist. "How about you transfer to the magic course? I'll vouch for you. You clearly have more talent for magic than for swordsmanship." He spoke shyly, clenching his fists and looking away. "I have to refuse. I heard I'm not very good at magic." The professor immediately shouted, "Are you joking with me? You understand agar compression techniques well enough to create super-compressed agar at your age. You're a one-of-a-kind genius, even by this academy's standards. I can personally guarantee it. I don't know what fool told you that you have no talent, but he clearly had no idea what he was talking about. Riley, are you sure you don't want to transfer to the magic course?" Everyone couldn't help but be amazed that a professor who almost never praised anyone would say something like that. It was truly astonishing. In any case, he pointed straight at his face and said in a menacing tone, "It would be a great loss to the world if you don't learn magic. I would even go as far as to say it's a crime against magic." Riley could only give a slight smile at his words. He paused for a moment, surprised, thinking to himself, "Wait, what did he just say, agar compression technique? I feel like I've heard about that before." Going back a bit to the old days. Back then, people didn't know about odd, or life force. Because of that, casting magic was very difficult. You had to constantly compress the agar in your body, then try to gather and use the lucky bits of agar that had mixed with odd. Bella suddenly spoke up. "Thinking back, that sounds ridiculous, doesn't it?" He continued, "Professor, do you know about odd?" The professor thought for a long time before asking back, "Odd? What's that?" While he was wondering what odd was, the young man had already started to deduce from his reaction. "I've confirmed it. The present world still doesn't know about the existence of Ode. If that's the case, then what I learned in the suppression team is knowledge from the future." His eyes widened in surprise. "I have to be careful about who I share this with." His hand immediately clenched with determination. But the man asked again, "So do you want to transfer to the magic course?" He bowed respectfully and replied politely, "I'm sorry, but I am devoted to swordsmanship. Though I'm very grateful for the offer, I'm afraid I must refuse." The professor sighed helplessly and said, "If that's what you want, then I have no choice. If you change your mind, you can come find me anytime." The professor's hand clenched with determination. The boy could only scratch his head and reply softly, "Thank you very much for the offer, Professor." The professor pointed towards the stands and said, "You can go back to your seat now. No one will blame you if you're distracted during class anymore. It's even fine if you leave because you're bored. This lecture is too basic for you." As soon as he finished speaking, everyone was surprised. A group of people started whispering amongst themselves, praising him. "Riley is amazing, I can't believe it. To think Professor Carlos thinks that highly of him." The professor stood up, watching his retreating back. Suddenly, a man who was constantly adjusting his tie stood up and said politely, "Mr. Gray." His voice was strained, yet had a hint of warmth. The young man couldn't help but feel a chill and think, "What is this? Why do I feel so creeped out?" It wasn't until late afternoon. He was summoned to an office after class. Ariel. He strode down the hall with his long legs, a lone figure holding a letter with a puzzled look on his face. Being summoned so suddenly. Could it be Professor Carlos? Imagining that stern face, he scratched his head in frustration. Don't tell me Professor Ariel is also going to advise me to switch courses. He stood before the intricately carved wooden door, hesitating. He stood there rereading the letter over and over. He knocked politely. A voice echoed from within. "Riley, is that you? It's not locked." He entered with his head lowered. "Pardon me." Glancing up, he spotted something about to lunge at him and immediately drew his sharp sword. He gently thrust the sword straight towards the object, without a moment's hesitation. The girl gasped in shock, her mouth wide open. His hand was still in position, holding the sword. He thought to himself, "My body is reacting on its own. What the hell?" He couldn't help but be startled when he saw the girl sitting on the floor, trembling with the tip of his sword pointed at her. His eyes widened. "Huh. This girl." She sat there, panting nervously. "I feel like I've seen her somewhere before." She glanced at him timidly. From the side, a voice praised, "Oh, not bad at all." Ariel said confidently, "I knew my judgment wasn't wrong." The man with the center-parted hair asked Bella, "You didn't go easy on him at all just now, did you?" Ariel said, "Did you tell her to conserve her strength?" The bearded man questioned, "Her movements were perfect, but her sword was knocked away that easily. That's not natural at all." "That name is really familiar." Ray instinctively glanced over at Bella. "So it really is Bella Albright. She doesn't look much different now than she does in the future." The sorceress Ariel couldn't stand it anymore. She looked at the two men with disdain. "Are you two being serious? If you can't even tell after seeing that, then maybe you should just quit teaching." The man with the center-parted hair got a little flustered. No, we were just kidding," Ariel scoffed. "A pity, but I'm forced to admit it." Ray was still confused. "Professor, what are you all doing?" Ariel cheerfully explained. "We were betting on whether you could block Bella's surprise attack. Thanks to you, I won big." She threw something to Ray. He quickly caught it. Ray was completely surprised when he opened his hand. A gold coin. "This is a fortune." Finally, the old man with the mustache conceded, "But it's true, just as you said." He had been watching the match closely from the beginning. It looked like he was intentionally not using his dominant hand. The bearded man diagnosed, "It's probably because of an injury." Ray clutched his arm in pain, realizing they were completely right. "Instead of a simple muscle injury, I think it's a deeper kind of damage." The other man agreed. "I agree. A common wound wouldn't affect him that much." Ray couldn't believe they had guessed correctly just by looking. "You guys knew that just by watching," the bearded man replied, as if it were obvious. "If we couldn't even tell that much, how could we be professors at this academy?" The man with the center-parted hair added, "In any case, it seems Professor Ariel has known about this since the entrance exam." Ariel said coldly, not wanting to talk to them anymore. "If you understand, then please leave. He is my student. I'm not handing him over to anyone." The two men turned to leave. The man with the center-parted hair left with a compliment. "We acknowledge he has potential, at least for now." The bearded man glanced over, his eyes sharp. "But if that wound doesn't heal, it also means he doesn't meet the Academy's entrance standards. Remember that." Ray's gaze grew wary. Now only Professor Ariel, Bella, and Ray were left in the room. Ariel began to speak. Now that the nuisances are gone, she now exuded a mysterious aura. "Let's talk about magic." To start, Ariel asked about Ray's background. "I heard you used super-compressed eager in Professor Carlos's class." Ray had no intention of hiding it. "So you already knew?" Ariel recounted. "He came to my office and told me to transfer you to the magic division, but of course I refused." Ariel was lost in thought for a few seconds. "To me?" Then she revealed her other eye. It shone as brightly as a star. "You're better suited for swordsmanship than magic." It was the first time Ray had seen the professor reveal her other eye, and he couldn't help but be surprised. Ariel explained in more detail. "At the very least, you don't seem like someone who's skilled at compressing mana at all. There isn't even a sign that you've ever trained in it." From now on, Ray would have to be more careful, he thought to himself. That eye. You can tell just by looking. "It's best not to lie." Ray answered honestly. "You're right." Ariel probed deeper, her curiosity about her student far from satisfied. May I ask what trick you used? I promise I won't tell anyone, and there's a reward too. Ariel glanced toward Bella as if there were a secret between them. I really need to know. For that girl's sake. Ray answered reflexively, but stopped himself just in time. Inwardly, Ray breathed a sigh of relief. For the sorceress, I mean for Bella. I almost slipped up and called her a sorceress. Ariel looked at Bella's troubled face and said directly, That's right. Although she's a genius when it comes to magic theory, her practical skills aren't the best. Ariel seemed a bit troubled. She was worried. For some reason, she can't use the Egger compression technique well. That's why she can't create super-compressed Eager. Ray watched Bella intently, recalling the information he knew. I also heard that Bella Albright is a late bloomer, so that's the reason. Ariel continued talking about Ray's power. But, according to Professor Carlos, when you used super-compressed Agar, it didn't look like you were compressing Agar at all. If a way to use super-compressed Agar without actually compressing it really exists, she won't be transferred to Professor Bradley's. At the mention of this, Bella's expression soured. Ray froze. Professor Bradley. The Professor Bradley you're talking about. Ray's face showed clear horror. He asked frantically, Is it Professor Varian Bradley? Ariel replied, That's right. It seems you know him too. Ray's mind was in total chaos. It would be strange not to. He's infamous. The memories he still had were of countless bodies lying at his feet. He had performed countless experiments on people, killing who knows how many. An entire town was burned to the ground by one of Bradley's experiments. What's more, he also caused several magical disasters. The result was dozens of people dead, with Gray Bradley labeled a mass murderer. He's the most infamous magical criminal in history. He still hasn't been caught. Ariel was worried sick. If she couldn't create the super-compressed ER by the end of the year, she would be transferred to him and be operated on. The horror of Gray Bradley welled up inside her. I can't just sit here and do nothing anymore. Wait. This isn't good at all. Ariel's prediction of Bella's tragic fate. It's true. Even if the excuse is to enhance her magical abilities, in reality it's human experimentation. She's seen the bodies of those who died with their eyes open, unable to find peace. This hasn't been made public, but there are rumors that because of him, many have died and others were left permanently broken. Finally, after a long silence, Bella spoke up. As dangerous and terrifying as it is, if I can't use super-compressed ER, I'll be expelled at the end of the year. Ariel's voice was firm, filled with disgust for that sicko Bradley. Honestly, I'd rather have you drop out than let that man lay a single hand on your body. Ray was lost in thought for a long moment. The magic I know is knowledge that has never existed in this era. If I reveal it, I could change the entire course of history. Bella was terrified, her body trembling. Ray's deep gaze seemed to curse the future. The future you're talking about. Is it a world annihilated by the purgger? Or you being useless? Or warriors all falling in the blink of an eye? Is that really the future you want? His expression softened. But why wouldn't I? If that dark future changes, it can only get better. Ray put down his teacup with determination. I understand. I will teach you. From his hand, an orb of dark magic suddenly appeared. Outside in the arena, everyone was silent, staring intently at the display screen. Ray explained the magic. Ray spoke honestly. And that's all the knowledge I have about magic. As promised, please don't tell anyone that I taught you this. Ariel was firm. She made a promise. Of course. We even signed a magical pact, didn't we? Bella added, breaking the rules means death. This has been agreed upon by both sides. Ray felt reassured. So after hearing what I said, what do you think? Ariel, despite being a good professor, was also stunned by the wealth of knowledge she had just received. The section on the ode alone was enough to astonish me, but the magical knowledge you shared is even more than that. As for Bella, she was absorbing it very well. She found it concise yet thorough. How should I put this? It feels like I just took a magic class from 100 years in the future. Bella was fascinated by the knowledge Ray provided. She praised him sincerely. Just hearing your explanation is enough to advance the history of magic by 100 years. Although he was happy to be praised, Ray didn't dare to get complacent. Even though it was his lecture from 15 years in the future, to the people of this time, it really did seem like he was a century ahead. Ariel still had too many doubts. There's a lot I can't assess right away. Do you really think what he said is true? Bella placed her complete trust in Ray. It's highly likely that the theory is correct. There are no contradictions with current magical theory, and the fastest way to verify it is to test it. That's why we're here. Bella looked at Ray with anticipation. If everything you said is true, Ray, then this spell should work. She put down the paper and stepped forward. According to the theory, Bella raised her magic wand to form a magic circle. This spell should unleash my full power. Ray hesitated for a moment, then he tried to remember. Her full power. If I remember correctly, the full power of Bella Albright is said to be enough to incinerate an entire city. And in just the blink of an eye, the magic circle expanded exponentially, enveloping the entire area. What's more, she had lost control of the immense magical power before. Bella was still dazed. Before Ray could stop her, his form began to blur. Wait. An enormous amount of magic erupted from the arena floor. Like a volcanic eruption, a blinding light radiated everywhere. The aftershock of the power distorted Ray's face, making him look both pitiful and comical. Wait, right after that, a pillar made of fire appeared, shooting straight up into the sky. Ray quickly raised his hand in front of him to block the incredibly powerful scorching wind coming from Bella Albright. He squinted at the pillar of fire, utterly terrified. This is such overwhelming power. Ray thought back to a moment ago. The fire had spread rapidly, everywhere, and was about to reach him. If she hadn't managed to control her magic just a split second sooner, I would have been dead for sure. But thanks to her, the fire was brought under control, reversing its course away from him. It really saved my life. On the other side, Bella Albright raised her magic wand high and announced joyfully, I did it. I tried to control it, too. The flames burned fiercely, yet they seemed orderly, hovering around one corner of the space before swirling and converging into a single point. A massive ethereal dragon made of red fire soared through the air. Bella Albright smiled with delight, looking up at the magic she had created. This is so much fun. But suddenly she retracted the flames. Her voice was a light whisper, but... The very next second, Bella Albright's eyes closed and she fainted. Only the sound of her voice remained fading in the wind. I'm out of ER. She collapsed onto the ground, motionless. The sight scared Ray to death. He quickly rushed to her side, lifted her head, and called out anxiously, Bella! Ariel, standing behind him, calmly said, Calm down. She reassured him seriously. She just passed out from ER depletion. Just let her rest. Just as she said, Bella Albright's expression was peaceful as she slept quietly. Seeing this, Ray felt relieved and smiled. Ariel turned to examine the remaining embers of fire high above. She couldn't help but exclaim in amazement. Still, that was incredible. I can't believe she was able to create magic of this scale in such a short amount of time. Suddenly, Bella Albright replied in a low voice, The one who's amazing isn't me, it's the theory. Now I can easily create super-compressed ER, Riley thought helplessly. But that's your theory. How can she answer when she's asleep? Ariel paid no mind to her small action, simply sighing in relief and declaring, now that she has created super-compressed ER, the surgery is no longer necessary. I'll speak to Bradley myself to cancel the surgery. Recalling the sight of Bella Albright controlling the spell just now, she felt her worries ease. I'm truly so glad, because we were able to avoid that risky surgery, but I'm even happier that she didn't lose her ability to control her mana. However, Riley caught something strange in Ariel's words. He glanced at her suspiciously. He probed her ability to control mana. She affirmed with a serious expression, Yes, that's right. With a cool expression, Ariel explained, While Bradley's surgery can increase mana output, it comes at the cost of control. The exact mechanics are still a secret, but I've heard it's a type of surgery that forcibly breaks one's limits. He raised a hand to his chin, realization dawning on him. So that's how it is. So the reason the female mage from my past life couldn't control her immense mana, was it because of that surgery? She smiled, satisfied, and summoned the contract paper. In any case, thanks to you, Bella can now create super-compressed ER. That means the condition in our contract has been fulfilled. Ariel held the paper up before him, stating seriously, Now it's my turn to fulfill my end of the bargain. And first, she glanced down at Riley's arm, is your arm. I'd like to use my magic on it. Immediately after, wondrous streams of blue energy and beautiful butterflies emerged from her hand. Ariel brought her hand close to the back of his. She applied the magic to it. In an instant, the entire space was bathed in a blue light and filled with butterflies, all emanating from where their hands met. A moment later, Ariel stopped. The beautiful, strange phenomenon gradually faded away. She asked casually, "How does it feel?" Riley tried moving his hand, clenching and unclenching it. His eyes widened in disbelief. "I can move it." Riley smiled gratefully. "Thank you so much, Professor." But then a doubt crept in, and he asked, "But not even recovery potions or magic could heal this." "Is that so?" Ariel replied with proud confidence. "Don't compare my nerve restoration magic to some common recovery potion." She crossed her arms, asking thoughtfully, "But can you move it just like before? Try swinging your sword." "Yes." Without hesitation, Riley turned and moved a short distance away from her. He drew his sword and attempted a horizontal slash. The sensation of the movement felt a little strange. He looked doubtfully at his sword arm. In the next instant, Riley executed a series of quick, sharp slashes. He frowned, displeased, and then fell silent for a moment. Riley stopped and looked at his hand, reporting with frustration, "My arm doesn't feel as fluid as it used to." Ariel didn't seem surprised to hear this. "Just as I thought." She put a hand to her forehead, explaining with a sense of helplessness, "I can heal your nerves, but my magic can't heal the wound in your soul." Confused, he looked at her and repeated, "My soul!" Ariel glanced at him, affirming seriously, "Yes, you heard correctly." She placed a hand on her chest as she explained, "Although current magical knowledge hasn't yet proven the existence of the soul, I believe it exists." She raised a hand covering one of her eyes. "After all..." When Ariel pulled her hand away, a strange design had appeared in her pupil. "I can see it with this eye." She could see a humanoid cluster of light inside Riley, with smaller lights slowly gathering around it. "Even now, your soul is gradually recovering. As long as you don't overexert yourself, it will heal on its own over time." He looked at his hand in stunned disbelief, repeating, "Don't overexert myself." He then looked up at her to ask, "You mean I shouldn't train too hard?" To his surprise, Ariel shook her head. "That's not it. You can still train as you normally would." She rested her chin on her hand, her expression endlessly curious. "But I'm curious, what kind of swordsmanship? It could possibly damage the soul like that." Hearing that, he could only manage a strained laugh, unable to answer. Suddenly, she said something that stunned him. "Then again, a sword style that uses the soul to swing the blade does exist." With a mysterious look, Ariel mentioned a name, Army White. "You know who that is, don't you?" Riley's eyes widened in shock. "Huh!" The face of Army White from his past life flashed through his mind. Why is she mentioning the Sword Saint's name now? At this point in time, we shouldn't even know each other. Seeing his strange expression, she asked with a tilt of her head, Was I wrong?" "The way you use your sword looks like you learned it from Amy." Ariel touched her lips, mulling it over. "But on second thought, it's a little different. The person who taught you swordsmanship seems to be even more skilled than Amy." She looked at him, her tone one of absolute certainty. "Although in just a few more years, Amy will reach that level too." Riley broke out in a cold sweat at her sharp insight. She knows about that too. He had vaguely mentioned his skills. "I learned swordsmanship at a dojo in my hometown." His mind raced, trying to figure out how to deceive her. "I have to change the subject. If this conversation continues, I'll slip up." He quickly changed the topic, just as Riley had hoped. "Is it true that swordsmanship can harm a soul?" Ariel confidently answered his question. "Not at all. At least not any ordinary kind of swordsmanship." She put her hands on her hips, lecturing him with an air of authority. "There's nothing ordinary about felling a high ogre in a single slash, not to mention all the other ogres and trees around it." Her words brought back the memory. His one sword strike had cut down a horde of monsters, saving them from a dire situation. So she knew all along. And because of that, Ariel had joyfully won a bet. "Of course. Thanks to you, I nearly won my bet." Then her demeanor turned serious. "I inspected the scene and the aftermath. It was truly impressive. Even the most refined cutting magic couldn't do that." Ariel pointed at Riley, probing cautiously. "That mysterious power inside you. You used it, didn't you?" he asked in surprise. "You can see it, Professor." "Of course I can," she replied with a firm tone. A faint light emanated from Ariel's eyes, lending her words a mystical quality. "I can see that power leaking through a chained door." Hearing that, Riley was stunned, speechless. He thought of the intricately patterned door bound shut. His heart grew heavy as he repeated, "A chained door." He looked at the woman before him, his heart filled with nothing but shock and awe. It was impossible to guess something like that. She can really see it. Ariel, oblivious to his state, continued with another revelation. "To be honest, I've seen a power similar to yours before. Though I don't think they're identical, they just have a similar feel, Riley asked, puzzled. A similar power. So there's someone else with a power like mine. She confirmed gravely, yes, but I'm not sure if they're even human. Then Ariel uttered a name that made his eyes widen in horror. The Purgger. That's what they're called. Seeing his expression, she stated with certainty, so you've heard of them. The image of a figure human-like but not human flashed in Riley's mind. His insides tensed with pressure as he questioned himself. Why is that name coming up now? Ariel fully confirmed it and pointed it out directly. So you have heard of it. Honestly, I didn't think it was that widely known. Meanwhile, Bella Albright, knowing nothing, was still sound asleep. She remembered the knowledge on the board earlier and made a guess. But then again, seeing as you know about that future-predicting magical theory, it's not too surprising. Hearing this, Riley could only scratch his head in embarrassment, not daring to confirm it. So it really is knowledge from the future, even though no one had discovered that part yet. Ariel crossed her arms and asked seriously, "How much do you know about the Purgger?" He dropped his hand, unable to look her in the eye, and answered vaguely, "I just know it's a threat of extreme danger to humanity." He recalled the tragic future and warned her gravely. He must be stopped before he appears before it's too late. If that's not possible, he must be destroyed at all costs. Ariel rested her chin on her hand, pondering. That might be a bit extreme, but I agree that he's truly dangerous. However, Balian Bradley seems determined to continue his experiment. Riley looked at her confused and asked, "Balian, how is he involved in this?" This time it was Ariel's turn to be skeptical. "You still have to ask." Immediately after, she calmly revealed the shocking news. The Purgger is the entity he is trying to summon. He stared wide-eyed in terror, repeating in disbelief, "The Purgger is created by humans. I've never heard anyone say that." Then he rested his chin on his hand, thinking of something suspicious. But the Academy in the previous timeline. Riley recalled their actions, arriving in time at the place where the Purgger appeared, which made him even more suspicious. It was as if they knew exactly where the Purgger would appear. As everything clicked into place, his eyes widened in horror. Riley spun around his mind, reeling in disbelief. "Don't tell me!" He looked at the tall, exquisite building before him, a sense of shock washing over him. The Academy was involved in the summoning from the very beginning. He immediately turned to Ariel, tense, and made a demand. "That experiment must be stopped right now." She agreed with a serious nod. Ariel crossed her arms. Helplessly, she explained the problem. "The head of the experiment is a professor just like me. I have no authority to shut down his research lab or prohibit his experiments. I've pushed my superiors to cancel it, but they won't listen." Riley asked sternly, "Your superiors who specifically?" Unfortunately, she shook her head, refusing to answer the question. "I'm sorry, I don't have the authority to disclose that. The problem is, without a direct order from above, no one can force him to stop the experiment." He closed his eyes, feeling utterly helpless. They won't even name the person in charge. Turns out the Academy's leadership is more complicated than I thought. Suddenly, Grayson had a great idea. His eyes flew open as he pondered. But what if he's a criminal? Wouldn't that change everything? From what he knew, that man would go on to participate in human experiments in the future. In the previous world, Balian's illegal experiments killed tens of thousands of people. I even know where he conducts his experiments. Instantly, Riley looked straight at Ariel, bluntly stating his thought. "I know where he conducts the illegal experiments. If we catch him red-handed at the scene." But before he could finish, she cut him off. "I'm sorry, but that method won't work either." He asked, confused. "Why not?" She calmly explained. "Entering a professor's research facility within the Academy without a warrant is a serious crime." Ariel warned with a cold expression. "Without concrete evidence, we'll be the ones thrown in jail. Or are you saying that you have evidence of his crimes right now?" Riley glanced away nervously, not knowing how to answer. Seeing this, she ended the topic. "If not, then we have to put this on hold for now." He clenched his fists, unwilling to accept it. So even though she knew how dangerous this was, her hands were tied. He replied, clearly annoyed, "I understand." Sensing his mood, Ariel leaned forward on her hands and brought up something more important. "Let's talk about your power. Do you want to learn how to control it?" Her words struck a chord with Riley. He immediately forgot about the other matter and looked at her in astonishment. He quickly asked, "Is that possible?" She replied with a smug smile. "There's a professor at the Academy who's very skilled at handling unknown abilities." Ariel glanced at him slowly, uttering the professor's name. His name is Hector Longfellow. Riley's eyes widened in disbelief. Hector Longfellow, the very person who trained the Sword Saint. She added seriously, I think he'll be interested in you. I'll arrange for you to start private training with him. Starting tomorrow. He replied happily. Thank you. Internally, he felt incredibly lucky. The whole reason I came to the academy was to master this power. Riley was ecstatic and content. He never expected to find a lead so quickly. The afternoon sun shone on the training complex, a sign of a good start to his new life. The next day, a man ran at lightning speed, flashing through the forest. Behind him, Riley was exhausted, his face covered in sweat. His mind wandered as he thought, I'm getting private lessons from Hector Longfellow. But as he struggled to keep up with Hector Longfellow, he was screaming internally, why do we have to run like this? The two were now in the forest next to the school building. While running, he suddenly turned his head and shouted sternly, your mind is wandering, I can feel it. If you still have room for stray thoughts, then speed up. Run until your body is completely exhausted. Hector Longfellow maintained his pace at the front while teaching seriously. Listen carefully. Only when you've burned every last drop of your physical energy will your spiritual power awaken. As long as you have even a little bit of stamina left, I won't let you touch a sword. Understood. Riley hurriedly replied, yes, sir. As he ran, he tried to convince himself if this is Hector's training, there must be a reason for it. But the matter with Bally and Bradley kept nagging at him. It was bothering him. But while I'm running around in circles here, sir, Balian is still carrying out his experiment to summon the purgger. Before he could think further, Hector Longfellow suddenly accelerated. Riley gritted his teeth trying to keep up, and because of that, his thoughts became hesitant. Maybe I should do something about it now. One day, Riley returned to Ariel's office. She was sitting behind her desk and asked with interest, so a week of training has passed. How are things going with Hector? He scratched his head and recounted hesitantly. Well, it's mostly been running. We only do a little bit of sword practice at the very end, but I do feel a little stronger. Hearing this, she laughed and remarked, that sounds just like him. Suddenly, someone came in through the door. Excuse me. That person handed Ariel a letter. Professor Ariel, there's a letter for you. She reached out to take it, thanking them. Oh, thank you. Then Ariel opened it and read it immediately. Suddenly, her eyes widened in disbelief. Seeing this, Riley asked with concern, is something wrong? He took the letter, held it up, and read it. When he saw the information, he too was utterly shocked. This is... The letter read, to the esteemed Professor Ariel. We have received a report that Bella Onbright has successfully created a super-compressed ER. This means she has indeed obtained a power similar to it. However, after a thorough examination, it is clear she has not truly compressed it. Therefore, her new ability cannot be recognized as a compressed ER. The contract remains valid and the operation will proceed as planned. Bally and Bradley. Riley couldn't contain his anger and cursed. This is insane, Ariel announced with a heavy heart. It seems Bradley is still determined to force her into surgery, even though she might not need it anymore. He looked at her and asked anxiously, can't she refuse? She was also powerless. Unfortunately, the contract is ironclad. Ariel clenched her fists, uttering each word carefully. Another recommendation is that unless Bradley himself cancels it, Bella can only choose between being expelled or undergoing the surgery. Riley whispered in disbelief, no. Suddenly, Ariel slammed her hand on the table and called out, Riley, I need your help. She looked at him with a serious plea. Show me where Bradley's lab is. If we expose his criminal activities, the contract will be voided. Riley looked back at her stunned and silent, and then he couldn't stop himself from smiling. Riley let out a breath, not forgetting to sarcastically retort to Ariel. Didn't you say it would be dangerous without evidence? Ariel obviously remembered what she'd said before. She replied nonchalantly, we will find the proof. I'm putting my faith in you. Her sharp gaze was fixed on him. No, perhaps I believed in you from the very beginning. My eyes told me that Ariel was serious. Expressing her thoughts, she calmly stated, you were telling the truth this whole time. It just took me some time to admit it. Hearing this, Riley could only look at her and listen in silence. Ariel walked up to his side and made a request, show me the way. Then, with a solemn expression, she declared, together we will expose his crimes. After that, the main character's face also grew a bit more serious. He then said, his lab is in the mountain range near Toro Village. After hearing his answer, Professor Ariel's gaze grew thoughtful, and she continued, in the Toro Mountains, you say, I remember clearly that he has an Academy-approved laboratory there. This information from the professor suddenly astonished Gray even more. He's conducting illegal experiments right inside an approved lab. In response to that, the red-haired woman snapped back, "What better place is there to conduct illegal activities? Even if he's there for a long time, no one would suspect a thing. On top of that, no professor would ever meddle in another's lab. However, as long as we find evidence of his crimes, no one will hold us accountable for breaking into the laboratory." Suddenly, a knock came from outside, along with a voice, "It's me, Bella." At that, Ariel called her in. "Come in." Entering the room, Bella worriedly took out a letter and said with a grave tone, "Professor, I received this letter." Before she could finish, Ariel gently took the letter from the blue-haired girl's hand and reassured her. "Don't worry, I'll handle this." Her serious expression made Bella a bit flustered, and she asked, "You mean, Professor, you're intentionally confronting Varian for my sake? All by yourself?" In answer to that question, the professor gave a very confident smile. "I alone am enough." Helpless Bella cast a worried glance at the main character. As if understanding, Ray quickly said, "Please wait a moment. I'm going too." Beside him, the blue-haired girl, not to be outdone, chimed in, "Me too. After all, this is my problem." From the professor's point of view, she saw her two students, looking so eager. She put her face in her hands and sighed, advising them, "Hold on, he's a professor at the academy. Not to mention he's a maniac who has performed dangerous human experiments multiple times. If he gets his hands on either of you, there's no telling what he'll do. I can't let you two risk going there." As for Gray, he of course understood this. But he took another step forward and said, "That's exactly why going alone is even more dangerous. If I use the power that defeated the general, I can definitely be of some help to you. Moreover, if you disappear as a specially admitted student, I'll be expelled. Please let us decide our own fates," they said, looking forward, with faces full of determination. And so after a staring contest, Professor Ariel relented and agreed to let them come with her. "It seems you two would have come along even if I tried to stop you. All right then. But you have to promise me one thing. No matter what happens, your own safety comes first. Is that clear?" As she said this, her eyes were filled with a seriousness that allowed no argument, and they both understood and nodded, "Yes, ma'am." Just like that, time passed quickly, and the three of them made their way to Bradley's laboratory. Looking at the huge building in front of them, Bella was the first to speak. "Is he really conducting illegal experiments in here?" Hearing this, the professor nodded in reply. "That's right. So now we look for evidence, right?" With that said, she turned a questioning gaze to Gray, and Gray didn't keep her waiting, replying immediately, "Yes, this is definitely the place." From Bella's perspective, even though they had come this far, she was still a little worried. "If you say so, then I believe you. But can we really gather evidence without getting into any trouble?" Just as she finished her question, Professor Ariel suddenly let out a bright laugh. "Varian is currently at a conference for the Law Society, so he isn't here. The main entrance is likely trapped, so we'll have to break through a side wall to get in." The red-haired woman's plan made Bella a bit hesitant, and she whispered, "Is that really okay?" Ariel replied with a face full of confidence, "Breaking into an approved laboratory is already a crime, so it doesn't matter. If you've changed your minds, you two can go back." Hearing those words, Bella's hand unconsciously tightened around the staff in her hand. She replied in a determined voice, "I'm going, but are you really sure about this? You're doing all of this just for someone like me." Before she could finish her sentence, Ray turned and retorted, "You're wrong. Stopping his experiments is for the sake of the whole world. Model. If not, countless people will die. No! The entire world will be sacrificed to him." Gray's intense and tense expression stunned Bella, who instinctively asked, "What?" To be more certain, Professor Ariel also spoke up. "What Gray said might be a bit of an exaggeration, but I agree that he must be stopped, so don't worry too much. We're not risking our lives just for you, Bella. The point is, it's time to go." With that said, the three of them shot forward like the wind. As she moved, the red-haired girl used her magic, creating streams of red light. They shot straight at the concrete wall in front of them, causing a sizable explosion. Dust and smoke billowed everywhere. Looking at the large hole blasted through the wall before them, Ray gave an awkward smile, thinking to himself, "Haha, that's a bit over the top." Pushing that aside, the three of them quickly entered the laboratory through the hole in the wall. Just one look at the scene inside, and Ray's face darkened. "What is this?" he cried out at that moment. Before the three of them were countless containment cells, still stained with dark blood. A few cells still had people inside their entire bodies covered in blood. The experiments had reached this stage. The intruders no longer needed to waste their energy searching. Ariel commented, "Looks like we don't need to find any evidence." Bella anxiously scanned the surroundings and said, "There are so many of them here." The professor heard this and nodded in agreement. Just at a glance. I've already seen 14 types of forbidden arts which are already serious crimes, not to mention the illegal human experimentation which is just as severe. As she spoke suddenly, the eyes of all three of them were drawn to something. Not far away, a strange magic circle caught their attention. What is that? It looks like some kind of altar. What should we do? The original plan was to just get the evidence and leave. But should we rescue the people who are locked up? The mage Bella asked anxiously. However, her suggestion was rejected by the main character. We can't stay here too long. If we delay, that Varian guy might... Before he could finish his sentence, a startled voice suddenly rang out from behind them, catching Gray's attention. From within the shadows, a dark figure began to step forward and speak. Were you calling for me? From Ariel's perspective, she seemed to know who had arrived, so she lazily asked, How was your conference? Varian. Hearing that the newcomer was Varian, our main character hurriedly drew his sword and got into a fighting stance, his heart aching as he wondered why on earth he was here. Ignoring his thoughts, Varian on the other side began to explain, I sent a substitute to that. I have an important experiment to conduct here. I've just acquired some fresh materials. I have to hurry while they're still fresh. However, I suppose I'll have to change my plans. He spoke while adjusting his glasses, his whole body exuding a terrifying pressure that caused the expressions of Gray and the others to change in an instant. Professor Varian's voice continued its explanation. After all, I want materials possessing magical potential that far surpasses that of ordinary people. I don't know how you heard about me, but I'm certain you haven't told anyone that you were coming here. Right. If all of you were to suddenly disappear, no one would suspect me. With that, he flashed a cunning smile, as if he had already secured his victory over the three people opposite him. After hearing what he said, Professor Ariel questioned him in a sharp tone. You bastard! Don't tell me you're planning to use us as lab rats. Just as she'd said, Professor Varian had no intention of denying her words. He simply replied calmly, calm down. Your sacrifice will push the limits of magic. For that reason, I cannot let you leave here alive. I will use you as his most excellent materials. With that, the man flashed another cunning smile, but before he could utter another word, a fireball carrying intense heat shot straight towards him from the opposite side, causing his expression to darken somewhat. Following that, a terrifying explosion erupted within the gloomy hallway, and the one who had just unleashed that magical attack was none other than the mage Bella. From the look of it, she had been wanting to get revenge on this Professor Varian for some time now. It was just a shame that the attack just now didn't seem to have much of an effect, after waiting for the smoke and dust to clear. A flash of surprise crossed both Ariel's and Bella's faces as they looked ahead. Professor Varian stood there calmly brushing dust off himself, as if nothing had happened, because he had managed to activate a magic barrier just in time to protect himself. He even offered a word of praise. Wonderful. Truly wonderful. Ariel's divine eyes are as sharp as ever. To think a special student. But you possess a special talent. Perhaps I should start paying closer attention to those recruited by the other holy eyes, he said, pausing for a beat, before directing a taunt at Bella. I can't say I'm unimpressed with your little magic trick, but an academy student trying to assassinate a professor. In response to his words, Bella shot back with a tone of regret. Better than being killed myself, though it seems I've already missed my chance. From Professor Ariel's perspective, not wanting her two students to fall into danger, she urged, we should retreat right now. We already have enough evidence. Hearing her say that, the blue-haired girl nodded in agreement. The academy can handle the rest. However, that villain Varian obviously wasn't going to let them retreat so easily. Just then his cold voice rang out. Do you really think you can leave here safely? With that, he unleashed his magic, firing a blast of dark purple energy straight at Bella with lightning speed. Fortunately, at the most critical moment, Professor Ariel lunged forward using her shield magic to block the attack. Seeing this from behind, Bella cried out in worry, Professor! Over here, the villain Varian saw his attack being blocked, yet he still gloated smugly. Resistance is futile. This is one of my research achievements, the Ravenous Flame. It burns away the enemy's defensive magic and turns it into fuel. Theoretically, it cannot be stopped. Its only drawback is the costly materials required to create it. And just as this evil professor said, the golden shield Ariel created didn't last for more than a few moments. Countless cracks appeared before it finally shattered into pieces. With no other choice, Ariel was forced to use the energy from her holy eye. She created a blue shield right behind the golden one. It appeared just in time to block Varian's attack as the golden shield disintegrated. However, the second layer of defense didn't last long either. Cracks once again spread out in all four directions. Using this brief window of time, the professor hurriedly gave an order. Bella, take the bag of magical memories and Gray and get out of here now. Take it to Hector. When he sees it, he'll know what to do. As she spoke, she gently placed a cube into Bella's palm. But how could Bella possibly leave her professor behind in a place like this? She immediately slammed her scepter onto the ground, creating a hemispherical dome of air that enveloped everyone. Her action made the female professor extremely worried. She screamed, "What are you doing? Get out of here now." In response, Bella said in a firm voice, "Professor, your shield is being destroyed. Let me help." Hearing what number 3 said, the red-haired woman grew even more furious and yelled, "Didn't we promise each other before we came here? If something went wrong, you had to prioritize your own life. Varian's magic is clearly unnatural. My defensive magic is completely useless against it. I'll buy some time, so..." But before the beautiful professor could finish her sentence, the magical shield she had created shattered into pieces, and a worried expression washed over her face. Yet for some reason, Bella remained calm and said, "It's all right." Right after that, Varian's attack collided with the barrier Bella created, causing a deafening explosion to ring through the air. But the evil professor's attack didn't advance an inch. Bella's explanation began to ring out. "This magic isn't all that powerful, you know. It just requires a slightly different kind of defensive spell." On the other side, Varian began to panic when he saw his attack had no effect. He shouted, "Impossible! The counterspell theory for the Ravenous Flame is known only to us. How could you possibly know it?" On the other side, Bella enlightened him with a confident voice. "Someone recently taught me a new theory. With it, this spell is a piece of cake." Hearing this, Varian nearly went insane. He roared like a mad dog, Who was it? Name the traitor, give up, and I will grant you a peaceful death." Bella replied with a slightly teasing tone. "You want to know who taught me? That's a secret. But he is a student from the swordsmanship department." On the other side, veins bulged all over Varian's face. It seemed he was absolutely livid. He roared, "So, it seems you won't answer seriously, will you, fine? Then prepare to be burned alive." As he spoke, he pulled out a pink crystal from somewhere and crushed it directly in his palm. Next, as if empowered by this crystal, he used his magic to create countless gruesome skulls that flew forward. These skulls began to intertwine with each other, eventually forming the shape of a ferocious beast's head that bit down towards the group, engulfing them in its magic. From behind, Ray saw this and broke out in a cold sweat, asking, "Bella, are you still okay?" Bella replied, "I'm still okay. The shield can still hold." But as she said this, her voice faltered slightly, and with just a quick glance, Varian had guessed the reason and said it outright. "But your mana reserves won't last much longer, will they? With your supply, the most you can hold out for is another minute." Back to Bella. She quickly told her professor, "Professor, attack him now, I'll handle the defense." Hearing that, the professor nodded in understanding. All right. With that said, she began to activate her holy eye, silently observing what was in front of her. Very quickly, she discovered a weak point in Varian's attack magic. The flame is thin at that spot. "I can move my mana outside the barrier." No sooner said than done. Without a hint of hesitation, the red-haired woman thrust her hand forward and quickly focused her magical energy, forming a bolt of lightning that shot straight towards Varian. However, for some unknown reason, before the attack could even hit its target, it vanished mid-flight. That Professor Varian sneered. "Trying to fight back, are you? You can't even get close to me." Seeing this, Ariel's expression grew grim, not knowing what to do. At the same time, Ray was rapidly trying to think of a solution. If I remember correctly, Professor Ariel's offensive magic is among the weakest of all the professors. And with the properties of this flame, it must be absorbing her magic. Before our protagonist could think any further, Bella's weak voice called out, "What do we do now? My energy is almost gone." Looking at her friend's constantly trembling body, Ariel said bitterly, "This is why I told you all to run when you had the chance." Ray stepped forward reassuringly. "Leave it to me." His words seemed to spark a sliver of hope for the entire group. Bella quickly asked, "Ray, do you have a plan?" "Your sword can't reach him from here," Ray replied softly. "It's okay. I'll definitely make it happen." As for Ariel, she immediately guessed what Ray was about to do and warned him, "Are you sure about this? Using that power again could kill you. Even if you survive, the arm you use it with might never recover." A smile unknowingly appeared on our protagonist's face as he said, "It's better for one of us to die than for all three of us to die, don't you think so?" Back to Varian's perspective, he suddenly saw a blinding flash of light erupt from within his magic, and somehow in his line of sight. Ray had already burst through the flames. Before he could even process it, his head along with the flames had been sliced in two by Ray. His gaze was as calm as if he had just cut a piece of butter. In the wake of Ray's slash the mage, Bella's face went completely blank. And it wasn't just her. Even Professor Ariel couldn't hide her astonishment. Staring at Varian's body, his head severed from his torso. She said in amazement, "This is the first time I've seen it with my own eyes, but this is just overwhelming." Before they could remain stunned any longer, the entire prison began to rumble and shake. From above, cracks started spreading out in all directions. Rubble and rocks followed, raining down relentlessly. "The ceiling is collapsing," someone shouted. However, a small tremor like this wasn't enough to trouble our professor. She immediately stepped forward, activating her magic to stop the collapse. At that moment, a pink ripple of magic spread out from her feet in all directions. Next, countless beams of light shot through all the pieces of debris and held them suspended in midair. After that, Ariel glanced around for a moment and said, "Good grief, this is far beyond what I anticipated." Then, she turned back to our protagonist and asked with concern, "But are you okay?" Over here, our protagonist tossed his sword aside. He looked down at his own uncontrollably shaking hand and said, "My arm hurts a little. It's also a bit numb, but I can still move it." Ray quickly picked up his sword while the red-haired professor, seeing that her student was all right, nodded in satisfaction. "Your training is paying off." Ray sheathed his sword and admitted, "It seems so." Despite what he said, our protagonist silently thought to himself, "If the me from my village days had used this, I would have been unconscious for days. When I woke up, I probably wouldn't have been able to move my arm at all. But now it just hurts a little." Isn't that a huge improvement? It seems all those days of training were truly worth it. With that thought, Ray clenched his fist. Meanwhile, Professor Ariel watched him in silence. After a few seconds, she walked closer and said, "We're alive thanks to you, but I'm sorry for making you use that power." In response, Ray shook his head. "Please don't worry about it. I was the one who insisted on stopping Varian in the first place." Before he could say another word, the beautiful professor gave him a piece of advice. "Thank you, but if you can try not to use that power for a while, otherwise the damage might become permanent." As she said this, her face was filled with concern. Meanwhile, Ray couldn't hide his own conflicted expression. He bit his lip and nodded. "I understand." As for the mage Bella, she listened as the other two spoke to each other. She then curiously asked, Hey, excuse me, was that magic just now? But I couldn't sense any anger at all." In reality, trying to explain that power as magic was impossible for Professor Ariel. She obviously couldn't let her student dig any deeper into this, so she immediately cut her off. "I'm sorry, but I need you to stop asking about this. And don't tell anyone what you saw today." With the professor's serious expression, the female mage asked, somewhat bewildered, "But why?" Ariel didn't explain much. Instead, she gave her student an ultimatum. "If you can't promise me that, then I'll be forced to erase your memories." As she said this, the professor had already begun to use her magic. This made the female mage anxious, and she hurriedly agreed. "I understand we'll make a magic contract, right?" "That's right." Ariel nodded in response, simultaneously summoning a magic contract that floated in midair. Just like that, they both quickly signed it. After everything was settled, Ray finally spoke up. "So what now? I'm also worried about the experiments, but first I think we should help these people. It looks like they were just put to sleep with magic." As he spoke, he glanced over at the people imprisoned in the cells. Professor Ariel didn't object to this idea, but added, "This place isn't dangerous anymore, but we should still take them to the Academy's medical wing to be safe." With that, she snapped her fingers, causing the entire detention area to be flooded with a pale yellow light. Each person's body was enveloped in an aura. After she was done, the professor explained her actions. "I'll place a protective barrier to prevent them from being harmed from the outside. All right, let's continue investigating deeper inside. Looking closely, this place is truly insane. Illegal experiments are being conducted everywhere. I see that almost all of them use human cells to create magic catalysts or to enhance human magical abilities. I don't see any signs related to the purifier. Perhaps it's at a different facility," the professor speculated. Meanwhile, the main character was also feeling a bit puzzled. Is this really the place where the event that killed so many people in my past life happened? Could creating a normal magic catalyst really cause such a huge disaster? As he thought this, suddenly a terrifying thought flashed through Gray's mind. Wait a minute. The thing that killed everyone in my past life was the miasma that surged up from underground. As he realized this, the main character's demeanor changed and he stopped in his tracks. The professor who was walking ahead witnessed this and turned back to ask, "What's wrong?" Ray suspected that there might be something underground, so he voiced his suspicion. Maybe it's underground, there might be a secret passage. Hearing this, the red-haired woman also scanned the area for a moment, then whispered, I don't see any hidden passages. However, just a second later, she seemed to realize something. She rushed forward. Relying on her sacred eye, she began to notice some magical traces on the ground. She then announced her discovery. It's very faint, but I can sense traces of a short-range teleportation spell here. Hearing that, Ray asked, could it be a space that can only be accessed by teleportation? Ariel shook her head and continued her explanation. Based on the traces, the teleportation distance is about 300 meters downwards. There's definitely something there. Upon hearing this, Ray hurriedly stepped forward and asked, 300 meters underground. Can we get there? In response to his words, the professor didn't disappoint him. I can also use a teleportation gate. Let's give it a try. With that, she snapped her fingers, creating a magic circle on the ground. At the same time, she said, if there's nothing there, the gate will just lead to solid rock. Just like that, the teleportation gate slowly began to open. And when the group stepped inside, they couldn't contain their astonishment, because at that moment, the scene before them was of countless blocky buildings built closely together. Looking at the sheer number of structures, Ariel exclaimed in amazement. I can't believe there's such a vast space down here. Meanwhile, Bella, relying on her innate talent, sensed something. She pointed forward. I can feel a massive source of anger radiating from everywhere, especially from that direction. Everyone looked in the direction she was pointing. Over there stood a building. It looked somewhat different from the other buildings. The beautiful professor continued to use her sacred eye to observe, and she quickly noticed something strange. It's not just eager. There's another source of energy completely different from magic leaking from that place, and it's more powerful than anything I've ever seen. Hearing this, our protagonist also realized something. Before he could finish his sentence, the red-haired woman beside him nodded. That's right. That's the power of the purgger. Then, without a moment's hesitation, the three of them hurried straight towards the mysterious building from which the powerful energy was emanating. Stepping inside, the group saw several purple glass pillars, along with a black door bearing a six-winged symbol at the top. To prevent her two students from running into danger, Professor Ariel stepped forward first. Let's see. The energy is definitely coming from here, but there's no sign of the purger right now. As she spoke, she tapped lightly on the door to check it. Behind her, the mage Bella quickly asked, Are you sure we should be touching that thing? In contrast to Bella's tension, Ariel calmly replied, Just calm down. This door doesn't contain any power. It's just placed here as a symbol for the ritual. You know that, don't you? As she spoke, she walked behind the door and opened it as if to prove it was completely safe. Then she observed for a moment before continuing. The power isn't in the door itself, but in the magic circle surrounding it. As she said this, the red-haired woman's gaze shifted towards the giant glass tubes containing some kind of pink liquid. It's unclear if they had accidentally triggered something. But suddenly all of the glass pillars began to erupt with a ferocious power, sending Gray into a panic. He hurriedly shouted, What is this? Don't tell me it's actually summoning the purger. Standing beside him, Bella's face also contorted from the pressure. This flow of magic is too dangerous. We have to stop it now, she exclaimed. However, Ariel remained as calm as if nothing was happening. Don't rush in. According to my predictions, and this system isn't powerful enough to summon the purger. Next to everyone's utter astonishment, the space in front of the black door began to fill with countless spreading cracks, eventually revealing a pitch-black rift. Behind them, Gray and Bella were so scared watching this that their hearts nearly leaped out of their chests. Space is being torn apart, they shouted. At the same time, the entire magic circle on the ground reached its peak energy output. However, afterward, Gray and Bella looked a bit confused because from their perspective, although the magic circle was releasing an immense aura, nothing actually happened. To explain this, Professor Ariel enlightened them both. These devices aren't meant to summon the purger. They only punch a small fissure through to where it exists, and then siphon the power that leaks out from there. The energy core used to crystallize that power is most likely human lives. It seems about 10 souls were used, but during the molding process, many more may have been sacrificed. Most of the people captured upstairs were probably the raw materials for this, she quickly concluded. But this just left the mage Bella even more confused. Why would they go to such lengths just to collect energy? What do they plan to use it for? Answering this question, Ariel shrugged and said, You didn't see it. That engraved flame Varian used during our fight. The crystal that amplifies that flame is what will be created when this process is complete. In fact, the catalyst isn't limited to just the fire attribute. If they mass-produce these, who knows what they'll do with that kind of power? As she spoke, she glanced at the diamond-shaped object suspended in the air. Elsewhere, the spatial rift that had been created was also quickly closing. Over here. Gray, seeing this, began to speak. Let's see. The cracks are starting to disappear. So that's it. Varian never intended to summon the purifier, did he? In response to his question, the professor sat down to check the containers and said, I'm not sure either, whether he didn't want to or simply couldn't. But it seems these magical artifacts, that open space, have been pushed to their absolute limit. This is probably all they were capable of doing. Meanwhile, let's talk about Bella. She took the opportunity to observe her surroundings and quickly realized the value of the equipment installed here. I think this set of equipment is extremely valuable. I've never seen a spatial teleportation technique this precise and powerful. Professor Ariel completely agreed with her opinion. Exactly. Just as you said, to create a set of equipment like this, it would take the entire budget of a nation. And yet there are 8 complete sets here. There's only one organization that comes to my mind. Hearing this, Bella blurted out a name, guessing the Diska Empire. The red-haired professor shook her head, rejecting the answer. No, not them. They may be the largest nation in the world, but their magical research isn't advanced enough to create something like this. The professor's answer made Bella even more curious. Then who could it be? She asked again. Ariel didn't answer right away, but spoke slowly. There is an organization whose research capabilities far surpass even the Empire's. Before she could finish, Gray suddenly cut in. The World Alliance Academy, right? Hearing this, Bella turned to look at Gray with a confused expression, while the female professor immediately agreed. Exactly. No other research institute could handle the scale and budget of something like this. After she spoke, the atmosphere inside the room suddenly fell silent. A few seconds later, Bella finally spoke up. So are you saying the Academy is behind this place? But the World Alliance Academy is supposed to be the one protecting humanity from threats. Faced with her students' naive thought, the professor just shook her head slightly. It's understandable that you don't want to believe it, but there's no other organization that could have pulled this off. Over here, our protagonist also asked worriedly, but that doesn't mean the entire Academy is our enemy, right? The majority of them are still on the side of justice. As he said that, he silently recalled the events of his past life to reassure himself. At least before the regression happened. The Academy's volunteer forces were the ones on the front lines, even surpassing the punishment squad. They fought to protect civilians until the very last moment. After witnessing that future, I can't believe the Academy would be an enemy of humanity. Fortunately, so as not to disappoint Gray, the professor didn't refute his point. Just as you said, the majority within the Academy are likely still fighting for humanity and would not allow sacrificial experiments that take lives like this to happen. However, the Academy has countless researchers and facilities. Very few people truly know the full picture, and the one behind Varian must have an incredibly powerful backer. With Varian's authority alone, he could never have arranged all this. As Bella listened to the professor's explanation, she began to realize just how serious everything was. So, she asked, does that mean we can't fully trust the Academy either? Ariel calmly and quietly stated a bitter truth. I've been observing the Academy from the inside for 15 years. It is not an organization you can blindly trust. That's for certain. Most of the people in there believe they are doing good for humanity, even the ones behind this experiment. They have probably convinced themselves that they're acting for the greater good. The truth is buried deep in the shadows. Back to Gray, he didn't want to waste any more time, and so he got straight to the point. Is there any way for you to trace the mastermind? At this request, Ariel immediately used her sacred eye to search for clues, then said, let's see. There are no communication devices in this facility. Even the magical traces of the creator have been completely erased from the equipment. The cover-up was done so thoroughly that finding any trace is going to be extremely difficult. As she spoke, she glanced in one direction. Immediately after, a massive explosion suddenly occurred behind Ariel. Explosions erupted everywhere as if this secret research facility was self-destructing. This terrified our protagonist. In this perilous situation, Ariel was still observing cheerfully, but it seems they even installed a mechanism to erase all traces. Yet they didn't self-destruct the moment Varian died. Don't tell me they were waiting for an intruder before setting them off, or what? Not letting her professor observe any longer, Bella hurriedly reminded her, this is no time to be making theories. We have to get out of here right now. Witnessing her student's frantic state, Ariel just let out a soft laugh and said, calm down. It's just some explosive magic. The professors of the World Alliance Academy aren't so weak that they'd be killed by something like that. Ariel said, her face brimming with confidence as she activated a magic formation to protect them from the room's destruction. She warned the two of them, "Don't step outside the magic circle." The energy pillars were still glowing brightly as the room began to seriously collapse with chunks of rock falling from the ceiling. The area outside was now desolate and silent. Suddenly, Ariel's teleportation spell brought the whole group out. She did a quick head count and said, "Looks like everyone who was captured is safe now." Bella also let out a sigh of relief. "I really thought we were goners this time." Ray was also worried. "Wasn't that a little too dangerous?" Professor Ariel calmly replied, "Because we had more baggage than I anticipated, the teleportation was delayed a little, but it was worth it because we got these." What she was referring to were those energy pillars. Once we bring these back to the academy, they won't be able to ignore us anymore. The night was clear with a bright, round moon. The next morning at the World Alliance Academy, in the headmaster's office, he announced, "The survivors are currently being treated in the academy's medical wing. I truly have all of you to thank for putting a stop to Varian's illegal experiments." He held up the report to examine it. Now about these magic engines he had, each one is worth more than a nation's entire treasury. Ariel was also concerned. "That's right, and there were 8 of them in total. There's no way. Varian could have amassed that kind of firepower on his own. Where on earth did he get them?" The headmaster answered immediately, "They were stolen. They were stolen in transit while being transported. All 78 of the transport agents were wiped out." Hearing this, Bella and Gray were horrified. Ariel Eversharp asked again, "All 78 of the Academy's transport agents were killed. Don't tell me." "You're talking about the incident from 15 years ago," the headmaster confirmed. "That's correct. The cargo that was stolen that year was these very engines." She then asked in a low voice, "If I remember correctly, the one responsible at the time was—" The headmaster, knowing full well, answered, "Nosferatos. I'm sure you've all heard that name right." Ray and Bella did indeed know of them. The world's largest criminal organization, the parasites of humanity. No matter how many times they're wiped out, they just crawl back out of the shadows. He glanced over at Bella, who was seething with hatred. "They're the ones who killed my parents," she said. Odadrom replied in a low voice, "That's right. Even if you wipe them out 100 times, they'll just reappear. No one knows where they hide or even who their leader is. It's said that over 70% of all crime-related deaths are their doing. And it wouldn't be surprising if some of their members have already infiltrated this academy. What's worse is that there's no way to identify them, and even if we could, the academy wouldn't act." Hearing this, Ray couldn't hide his indignation. "What? Even if there are criminals inside the academy?" Ariel spoke up, cutting him off. "That's just how this academy operates now. Anyone with talent is given the opportunity to grow stronger regardless of their bloodline, a race or gender." The headmaster confirmed, "Precisely, and whether or not that person is a criminal is also irrelevant." Bella also found this policy absurd. If there are criminals here, then they should be punished. In truth, the headmaster was powerless. "I agree, but my superiors don't see it that way," Bella asked worriedly. "But aren't you the headmaster?" Odadrom could only reply, "I'm merely a figurehead." He slammed the file down on the desk. "I may be the public face of this academy, but in reality, my authority means next to nothing. You want to know who's really running this place?" Both Bella and Gray silently nodded with determination, and yet Odadrom simply laughed. "Then get stronger. The more you prove your own strength, the deeper you'll be allowed into the Academy's inner workings, and you will gradually uncover its hidden secrets." He added, "I can't name names, but there is an upperclassman who has enough influence to dictate the entire direction of this academy. Even that insane policy allowing criminals to join was his decision." Ray asked quietly, "So if we become stronger than him?" The headmaster confirmed, "Exactly. Perhaps you'll be able to change this entire academy." He looked them straight in the eyes. "In this place, strength is everything." Both Gray's and Bella's hands clenched into fists. Odadrom watched them, thinking to himself, "How interesting." Ariel never stood a chance against Varian, which means one of those two must have defeated him. Ariel's God's Eye is as sharp as ever. I can't wait to see what kind of monsters she'll create this time. By now, Gray had left the headmaster's office. He looked at the curse mark on his hand and muttered to himself, "So that's the power that runs this academy, huh? If I want to take down the purgger or find the mastermind pulling the strings, I have to focus on getting stronger first." Suddenly, someone walking by bumped into him. Startled, Ray spoke up. He apologized, but right after that, a kick came flying straight at him. He was hit and sent flying, but luckily Ray managed to stay on his feet. The damage from that kick was no small matter, though. Seeing this, the troublemaker remarked, tougher than I thought. Ray still politely asked, "Is there a problem?" The guy gritted his teeth. "A problem, you lunatic. You started it strutting around like you own the place. Does a failure like you, who only got in through special admission, deserve to set foot in this hall?" Ray was starting to get the picture. So he's another one who hates special admission students. But this is the first time someone's actually dared to kick me right in the middle of the hallway. He gripped the sword at his hip and asked, "You want to fight?" The guy paused for a moment, then replied, "I'd love to, but it looks like the second failure has just arrived." Behind him was Professor Ariel approaching. He started to leave. "I'm leaving first." As he walked away, he muttered, "Sorry, but the supervision here is really strict, so I can't get any closer." He bit his finger so hard it bled. "But I'll send someone else there soon enough." Dipper confirmed from Varian's side. The professor approached and asked, "What happened here?" Ray greeted her first, "Professor Ariel." Then he said, "Some student just kicked me. He said a divine-eyed special admission student like me shouldn't be showing his face around the academy hallways." She observed the situation and replied, "No weapons, no injuries. That means I have no legitimate reason to intervene." Then Ariel looked at him and asked, "So why don't you chase him down and punch his lights out?" Ray was shocked. "Wait, I'm allowed to do that." She then feigned indifference. "In my official capacity as a professor, I can't allow it. But my eyesight has been pretty bad lately. If something were to happen nearby, I probably wouldn't see a thing." Well, Ray decided not to bother with it. "This is too suspicious. I'll just let it go. I don't want to cause any more trouble." But Ariel didn't think so. "What a shame. Really?" Suddenly she asked, "Let me ask you something. Are the divine-eyed special admission students really hated that much?" Ray slightly shielded his arm and replied, "People often make fun of us, but this is the first time anyone's actually gotten physical." Ariel asked again, "So you get mocked by them?" She felt helpless for him. "I'm sorry. If only I had a little more authority." Seeing this, Ray comforted her. "Please don't worry about it. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have even been able to set foot in this academy. Besides, Bella and those others will prove that the divine-eyed program isn't a mistake. After all, you have a very sharp eye for talent." Hearing these words, Professor Ariel fell silent for a moment. She felt a weight lift from her heart. "Thank you." Then Ariel pointed straight at Ray and said, "But don't think this is someone else's problem. Of all the divine-eyed students, my expectations are highest for you." She listed a few names. Amy White, Leek, Muller, Jacob Bloomfield, like the special admission students before them. They all became top-tier talents. But you're the first person I've met who I believe can surpass human limits. Faced with the professor's expectations, Ray thought to himself, but it won't be easy compared to them. Then again, he had other worries. No, thinking like that is weak. The one behind Varian probably hasn't given up on summoning the purgger yet. Even they couldn't do anything about that thing. I returned to this timeline to make sure that I can defeat it. The fate of this world is in my hands. Over at the World Alliance Academy's training grounds, Professor Dag was explaining. Today's swordsmanship class will be live combat. Pair up according to the list on the board. Ray thought to himself, live combat, huh? I've got to be completely focused. If I slip up, people will start bad-mouthing the divine-eyed students again. At the very least, I have to prove I'm not any worse than the regular students. Suddenly, he felt something was wrong. Oh, great. The pairing on the board read Rayleigh versus Leonhard Abyss. Ray thought, Leonhard Abyss, huh? The top of the swordsmanship course. That means he's the strongest first year, isn't he? The professor looked at the students and said, I've paired up students of similar skill levels, so feel free to go all out. Treat it like a real battle. Inside, he was vehemently protesting. Similar skill levels, my ass. Why do I, a special admission student, have to fight the top-ranked guy? Ray recalled, and he hates divine-eyed students too. He's probably dying to beat the crap out of me after what happened before. Suddenly, he noticed someone behind him. Speak of the devil, Leon said cheerfully. Looks like you and I are a pair. I'm really happy about it. He was inwardly thrilled. To fight Ray, the top of the class, it's a true honor. I've trained harder than anyone else. Ray witnessed my true swordsmanship. Ray was growing more and more terrified of this guy. That dazzling smile. There was no doubt about it. He was thrilled that he finally had a legitimate chance to fight him. Leon added with feeling, I'm really looking forward to this. On the training grounds, the proctor asked, Is everyone ready? The command, begin, rang out. Instantly, the students started sparring with their partners. Leon, sword in hand, charged straight forward. Here I come. Thankfully, Ray managed to block it. Leon swung his sword with force, knocking him back. Immediately, he seized the opening and rushed forward again. Leon thrusted his sword powerfully, but luckily Gray dodged just in time. Not to be outdone, he swung his own sword up. The two powerful blades clashed. Leon said to Gray with admiration, "You're really strong. It's hard to believe you didn't get in through the regular admissions." Blade after blade flashed like daggers. They were both fighting on equal footing. Gray thought to himself, "I thought I'd be beaten instantly. I can't believe I'm still holding on. But even with all my strength, I can't match his pure power." He carefully observed Leon. His swordsmanship is incredible. It's a textbook perfect style. It's just like the book's every standard technique, but it's so perfect, it's terrifying. And that's despite my experience from a past life and my master's training. Suddenly, he stopped to gather his strength. Leon poured all his strength into this one attack and charged. But he's only lived one life and he's already a monster. As everyone watched, Leon and Gray fought so fast that only afterimages of their swords could be seen. They were amazed, exclaiming, "He's really going toe-to-toe with Leon." Leon was just as thrilled. "This is amazing, I could do this all day." But Gray was already exhausted. "I have no strength left. If it weren't for Professor Headcode's training, I would have collapsed by now." He glanced over at Leon. How is he not even panting at all? A sense of dread filled him. "I'm about to pass out. I have to end this match right now." The professor said to treat it like a real fight, right? "Let's treat this as a real battle." Instantly, Gray's gaze sharpened. In front of him, Leon was winding up his sword. He unleashed a powerful swing, but Gray ducked to dodge it. He channeled his strength into the hand on the ground. Leon was horrified. What? Gray had used his low stance to kick Leon's leg. While Leon was still stunned, he was kicked squarely in the leg. What the? Ray seized the opportunity, thrusting his sword upwards from below. Now it was Leon's turn to be horrified. So, he's really treating this as a life-or-death battle. But Leon still swung his sword. Both blades came to rest on their opponent's neck. Both Leon and Ray held their positions ready to take the other's life. He lowered his sword first and held out a hand. "It's a draw. That was a good fight." Leon replied, "No, not really." He mused. "In that last moment, all I could do was swing my sword. You, on the other hand, could have easily pierced my heart, if you'd wanted to." Leon looked at Gray sharply. "This is a mock duel, so you aimed for my neck instead. Am I wrong?" He had no choice but to admit it. "You've got me figured out, even with all those protective charms. Besides, aiming a sword at someone's heart in a mock battle would be a hassle, wouldn't it?" Leon didn't argue this point. "But that still means I lost." With that, he turned to leave. "Thanks to you, I finally understand the difference between a real battle and a sparring match. A fight isn't just about sword skills." Ray tried to save a little face. That was kind of a cheap trick in a swordsmanship class anyway. But Leon cut him off. "The instructor told us to treat it as a real fight. In a real fight, there's no such thing as a cheap trick." Suddenly, he pivoted on his heel, raised his sword, and challenged excitedly, "Let's go for another round!" Faced with the sword, Ray was exasperated. "Again, I only won because I caught you off guard. If we fought head-on, I wouldn't stand a chance. This isn't even about technique anymore. That guy's overall physical strength makes me look like trash." Suddenly, someone stepped forward, interrupting them. "Stop right there," an arrogant student said. "Whether this is real combat training or not, this is a swordsmanship class. No one said you could use anything other than a sword." He sneered at Gray. "And how does a special admission reject like you get paired with the top student anyway? Don't get cocky just because you have a little magic." He thought to himself, "It's not like I chose this match." Unexpectedly, Leon stepped forward to stake his claim. "The professor decided I was the only one worthy of fighting. Gray, please step aside." The professor also approached. "As Leon said, I was the one who made the pairings. I paired students with comparable overall strength, correct." He affirmed that Ray was the only one who could face Leon. He nodded, extremely pleased. The professor then looked at the troublemaker. "If you're not satisfied, try fighting him yourself. Defeat Gray, and you can be Leon's opponent." Provoked, he angrily agreed. "Fine." He still tried to sneer. "I defeated an examiner to get in here. Don't lump me in with those who barely managed a draw or those who couldn't even pass." But Leon looked at him with contempt. He's judging Gray based on his admission type, without knowing his true strength. It makes me feel like I'm looking at my old self. He had unconditional faith in him. This is a really good opportunity. His strength deserves to be recognized. Then Leon changed his target. But more importantly, you interrupted my time with Gray. Seeing the look in his eyes, he hurriedly looked up only to see Leon's handsome face twisted with rage.
For that crime alone,
you deserve to die. The troublemaker genuinely didn't understand why. Why is he so angry? The professor said to Gray. If you don't like the real combat rule, that's fine. You can only use your sword, understood? Behind him, Leon was still radiating a resentful aura. He worried to himself. I honestly don't know how strong this guy is, but if he got into the academy through the regular exam, then he won't be easy. Ray sized up his opponent. He definitely has better stamina and physical strength than I do. Even after my teacher's hellish training, I can't win against years of proper nutrition and physical conditioning. Ray decided to prepare an escape route for himself. I'm not too confident in my skills, but losing doesn't mean getting expelled, right? The professor said that even though this is just a class exercise, you shouldn't hold back on each other. All right, Gray, raise your sword. The other guy got into his stance. Instantly, he seized the opportunity and lunged forward. He thrusted his sword powerfully, roaring, "Time to teach the special admission brat his place. Know your place." Instantly, their two swords clashed loudly. Suddenly, Gray felt surprised. He lightly parried with his sword, then sent the guy flying backward. The troublemaker was stunned. Meanwhile, Gray thought to himself, his strike is so light. There's nothing special about his strength at all. The guy, enraged, got a running start and swung his sword. Gray thought, is he holding back or something? But who would have thought the guy was taken down on the very next hit? He fell flat on his back, his head hitting the dirt. The professor declared the results. The match is over. Gray walked over worriedly, asking, I'm sorry, are you okay? I was only aiming for your sword, but I ended up hitting you. I really thought you would dodge it. But he refused to give up and picked up his sword. That was just a fluke. You just caught me off guard. Despite his bruised face with tears and snot running down, he still said, one more round. The students started whispering, oh wow, that looks really painful. The professor, feeling helpless, just sighed. Fine, keep fighting until you're satisfied. And so he raised his sword and attacked again. In the middle of the training ground, under the glaring sun, Gray asked worriedly, are you okay? Someone whose eyes were now swollen shut mumbled, I'm fine. It was the class troublemaker who had been beaten until he was unrecognizable. The professor, exasperated, said, all right, that's enough. Someone take him to the infirmary. The professor, exasperated, said, all right, that's enough. Someone take him to the infirmary. He gathered the students and announced, and so this year's representatives will be Gray and Leon. Are there any objections? He immediately asked, curious, representatives. The professor replied, the two strongest first-year students will face the second-year champion in the intergrade match. He pointed right at Gray and said, the first years have lost 35 times in a row. His eyes filled with confidence. But maybe this year will be different. Gray, stunned, asked, 35 losses in a row. He spoke up. Is the power gap between the first and second years really that large? The professor confirmed it. That's right. Here at this academy, just a single year of difference creates a massive gap. Losing is perfectly normal. In fact, people just assume the first years will lose. But then he dangled a hook. Just putting up a decent fight is considered a great achievement. But if you win, it will be recorded in the Academy's history as a miracle. Just being chosen to fight is an honor in itself. With that, the professor gave Gray a confident pat on the shoulder and left. Don't get too stressed about it. All right, class is dismissed. He silently went over the information he just received. So the intergrade match isn't as big a deal as I thought. But for a special admission student and ice-blade sorcerer like me, this is the perfect opportunity to prove that I can actually fight. Gray thought to himself, I guess I have to start training hard. In the meeting room, the headmaster spoke. Next, for the final item of today's faculty meeting, we have a proposal from Professor Boudra. The old professor heard his name and replied, yes, I am proposing. I recommend the expulsion of the special admission iceblade sorcerer student Amelia. Ariel asked, outraged, Professor, why would you propose such a thing? I'm the one in charge of the iceblade sorcerer students. But Boudra immediately shot back, and that is precisely the problem. The old man voiced his objection. Amelia White failed her third-year advancement exam, and yet, she is being allowed to stay simply because she's a special admission student. All other students who fail are expelled. How in any way is that fair? Professor Ariel, still defending her students' interests, replied, as I have stated before, she is developing world-class combat abilities. It's just that currently the physical backlash from her body is too severe for her to use her full power. If not for that, she would have already passed the exam. The old professor sneered. "Oh, please, that excuse again." Another professor chimed in indignantly. "All you have to do is say severe physical backlash, and suddenly a useless student is transformed into a sealed genius. How much longer do you plan on using this mysterious hidden power as an excuse?" Ariel did not back down in the slightest. She reaffirmed, "I am telling the truth." She could regain her full power at any given moment. It could even be tomorrow if we pressure her now. She might lose that opportunity forever. That same professor cut in sharply. "You've used that exact same excuse before." He said angrily, "Is your goal truly to keep a student who fails to meet the basic standards here indefinitely?" Ariel refused to yield. "This academy exists to cultivate exceptional talent. What is the point of expelling someone with a natural gift just because they don't conform to the system?" The fat professor chimed in, sneering with contempt. "In the old days, an ice-blade sorcerer might have been impressive, but the current generation is nothing but a bunch of failures." The professor beside him piled on, "Perhaps it's time we consider abolishing the Iceblade Sorcerer Special Admission Program altogether." Ariel was stunned. "Abolish it, Professor, what are you talking about?" Budra immediately threatened. "The Eye of the Aspect was established by the Academy's founding council a long time ago, and it can be dismantled in the very same way. All it takes is a majority vote from the instructors. You haven't forgotten that, have you?" Another professor chimed in. "Honestly, the current members of the Eye of the Aspect are not impressive at all." Several others began to voice their complaints. "I heard Bella Albright has shown some progress, yes, but it's hardly a noteworthy achievement. Not to mention her magical aptitude is also quite questionable." These comments put Ariel in a difficult position. "That's..." The professors began to murmur amongst themselves. "The old Eye of the Aspect was truly powerful, but this new batch, right? They don't have any of the presence the previous members had." The whole group of professors started to gang up on her, putting on the pressure. Ariel was cornered. "There are more people against the Eye of the Aspect than I thought. At this rate, the Eye of the Aspect might actually be disbanded." Old Budra sneered again. "It's been outdated for far too long. Shouldn't it be thrown away?" Then he started mocking Ariel herself. "Or are you still going to tell us that your eye for talent is better than all of ours?" Her fists clenched. "I want to say, yes it is." But Ariel caught their prejudiced glares. Answering like that would only infuriate them more. Surrounded by a mob of men, she was being pushed into a corner. They already despised her. She tried to find an ally. However, many of the professors were more concerned about whether the Eye of the Aspect was beneficial to the Academy or not. "If I want them on my side, I can't say anything that would make them turn away from me." Her lips pressed into a thin line. Budra provoked her again. "Run out of things to say." "Well, at least you know you're past your prime." Another one chimed in. "You've had many great achievements, but perhaps you should retire before you tarnish your own reputation." "That's right, well said." The taunts echoed relentlessly. "If you want to teach your favorite students your own way, why don't you just start your own academy?" The old men started to roar with laughter. "What a great idea! Good luck finding any students willing to follow a washed-up Eye of the Aspect." Ariel felt helpless. "I can still spot a genius, but the kids need time. If they just had time, they would prove everything. I just need to stop them from being expelled." She resolved, before that happens, no matter what it takes. Suddenly, someone mentioned Ariel's star pupil. "Speaking of the Eye of the Aspect, isn't there a kid named Gray?" The professors shifted the topic towards him. "I hear he's quite promising." "Among the first years in the swordsmanship department." "That's right, I heard that too. It seems he's also participating in this year's interclass sparring match." Budra had found his juicy prey. "He sounds promising, doesn't he?" The old man proposed to Ariel, "So why not? Have him prove it in this match. We will decide the future of the Eye of the Aspect after seeing the results." She glanced at the professor who had tried to help her, but he could only shake his head helplessly. Ariel had to take the gamble. She spoke up. "His strength isn't suited for these kinds of mock battles. If it were a real life-or-death fight, then..." Before she could finish, she was cut off. "More excuses." The other professor vehemently objected. "If he can't perform during a training session, he won't be able to do anything in a real battle. Every single professor here knows that." Ariel snapped. "No! You don't understand. His ability isn't normal swordsmanship." The meeting room suddenly fell silent. The headmaster then moved to adjourn. "All right, that's enough for this meeting. This discussion is going nowhere. Let's end it here." He proposed, "In any case, the idea of watching the Eye of the Aspect student perform in the match sounds reasonable. We will observe his performance and decide afterward." Ariel was horrified and wanted to object. No, but the headmaster had already declared the meeting over. The old professors left the room full of sarcasm. Well, now I'm actually looking forward to the match. This ought to be interesting. Only one professor looked back with concern at Ariel, who was slumped over in her chair, devastated. Her fists were clenched. I'm sorry, my students. I was too weak. She remembered. Ray. It's better for me to die alone than for all three of us to die together, right? Just leave it to me. Ariel was filled with regret. I know your power isn't suited for a mock battle. Your dominant arm is in pain, it's going numb. But this is just... I know you still need more time. Her lips trembled, knowing that what she was asking of him now was too much. But even so, please... Ariel's body shook. Help them. She curled into a tight ball. Help those children, those uncut gems who hold world-class potential. A tear rolled down her cheek. Protect their future. Professor Ariel's tears streamed down her face. On the day of the interclass sparring match, the Academy's arena was brilliantly lit. A professor announced, "All right, we will now begin the interclass sparring match. To introduce our contestants, we have the first-year valedictorian, Leonhard Abius, the second-year valedictorian, Luino Herman, the first-year challenger, Grilly, and the second-year challenger, Debo Radato." He looked at Debo and thought with alarm, "Wait a minute. Isn't that the guy who jumped me in the hallway? I actually have to fight him." We will now bear witness to their abilities. All the students and professors focused their attention on the arena. It's that awful old man Bestra. Leon thought to himself, why are so many professors here to watch this match? So are the friendly interclass matches always like this? No, he replied immediately. This is a first. Last year, only 3 of the swordsmanship professors bothered to show up. He wondered why it was so crowded today, which prompted Leon to remember. He proudly explained that the professors must be curious about Gray. Seeing Leon's smug expression, Hartman thought to himself, he really does have a good eye for talent. Has he always been like that? Overhearing their conversation, old Professor Boudra said, Just as you guessed. We came to see the final match of the students from the special Eye of the Mind class." The students began to whisper among themselves. Ray spoke up. Final. What do you mean by that? Old Boudra turned his gaze to Ariel. Hasn't anyone told you? The old man answered with a sneer. The Eye of the Mind class is being disbanded. Ray was stunned. Disbanded, Professor, is that true? But Professor Ariel remained silent. If I tell Gray the truth, he'll push himself too far. He might even use that power. But in his current state, it could kill him. She finally spoke up, reassuring him. Gray Boudra is just trying to get into your head. Don't let him get to you. Just focus on the fight. Down in the arena, everything went quiet for a moment. He could see her hand trembling. Ray knew what he had to do. He replied, If that's what you say, Professor, then all right. Seeing this, old Boudra sneered, Suit yourself. Go on and make a fool of yourself. He was targeting her. When you suffer a humiliating defeat, the other professors will finally understand that Ariel's Eye of the Mind is no longer as sharp as it once was. To his surprise, Gray immediately shot back. I can't let that remark slide. The old professor froze for a second. What did you say? I don't care if you insult me, he declared firmly, but do not disrespect Professor Ariel's judgment. His words left her stunned, but old Boudra wouldn't let it go. And what kind of power could her eyes have possibly seen in you? Unlike your professor, anyone who isn't senile is certain you're going to lose miserably. Ray's anger flared and his voice dropped. Fine. Then I'll just have to prove you wrong. This sent the old man into a rage. What is with this insolent attitude? Calm down. The referee below ordered, Will the contestants please separate and join your respective teammates? Ariel couldn't help but worry. I appreciate your faith in me, but what are you planning, Gray? If he were fighting the top-ranked student, his practical sword skills might give him a slim chance. But his opponent is a monster. Debo Radato Bradley has undergone brain modification surgery, enhancing his reflexes to inhuman levels. He's practically a living weapon. The worst possible opponent for Gray's ambush tactics. Don't tell me he's planning on using that ability. At that thought, Ariel unconsciously pressed her lips together. Standing in the stands, she called out to him. Gray, she pleaded. Don't do this for me. Please don't push yourself too hard. He looked surprised for a moment, then gave a faint smile. He reassured her, I know. The referee, along with all the professors and students, turned their attention to the arena. The referee announced, The arena has been enchanted with protective magic to prevent any fatal injuries. Activating your opponent's protective shield will count as a victory. Fight as though this is a real battle. A real battle, Leon thought to himself. The match between the top-ranked students begins. Leon immediately seized the chance to rush forward. "Here I come!" Hartman got excited as well, taking his stance. "You're good. Show me what you've got." Their sharp blades clashed against each other. Hartman, having already built up momentum, swung his sword with great force, but Leon managed to duck just in time. He then braced himself with a hand on the ground, using it for leverage, and swung a powerful kick upwards, but Hartman dodged it. Leon thought regretfully, "I guess I can't fight like Sir Grey," but Hartman was impressed. "Hey, you're not bad. Honestly, you're stronger than I was as a first year." Then he radiated a powerful pressure and charged forward. Time to pick up the pace, making Leon anxious. "Can you keep up?" A storm of sword strikes came rushing in relentlessly. Hartman kept chasing Leon until he was backed against the damned shield. Hartman's blade was already swinging down. It stopped right at Leon's neck. The referee shouted, "That's enough. The winner is clear. The winner of the top-ranked students' match is Hartman." The two of them sheathed their swords and spoke cordially. "Thanks for the match. That was a good fight. Next, we will begin the challengers match. Will the two representatives please step forward?" Leon then turned to him. "Good luck," Ray replied. "Thanks." "I really went and ran my mouth," he thought to himself. "Now I have to back it up. Before I returned to the past, I fought countless monsters far more desperate than this. Compared to them, this is still winnable." The tip of Debo's sword dragged across the ground. He muttered as he walked, "Just a little more, Professor Bradley. I'm going to send him to the same place you are. Straight to hell." This was accompanied by a savage smile. The selection match for the Inter-Academy tournament. The two took their stances. The arena was dead silent, not a single movement as the referee shouted, "Begin." The two of them lunged at each other instantly. Ray was stunned as he realized something was off. He was knocked backward by Debo, his sword hand trembling. "Damn, that's heavy," Ray thought, sizing up the maniac in front of him. Professor Ariel did say his reflexes were enhanced, but don't tell me his arm strength was boosted as well. With a physical gap this huge, all of my strategies are useless now. How am I supposed to fight him? He thought to himself that he still had that skill, but Ray remembered Professor Ariel's warning. "Listen here. No matter what happens, don't use that power. In the worst-case scenario, you'll die." He had promised her, "Yes, ma'am," but she was still worried, adding, "The tournament is important, but it's not worth risking your life. Besides, the arena's defensive barriers won't be able to withstand it. If you use it, your opponent might die." This truly frightened Ray. He decided to charge forward recklessly. "I can risk my life to protect the special admission spot for the all-seeing eye, but killing someone in the middle of a school tournament is out of the question." That Debo guy also readied himself. Two slashes clashed violently at the same time. Debo immediately swung a vicious blow, but luckily Ray managed to parry it in time. He thought to himself, "His movements are so strangely simple. With his physique and reflexes, he could take me down in a single hit." Ray shrewdly assessed, "He's not lacking in skill. He must be holding back on purpose. What is he planning?" To his surprise, he saw a savage grin. The smile horrified Ray as he was knocked back. Then the tip of Debo's sword lunged forward again, aiming straight for Ray's eye. "I can't dodge this," and yet he still managed to raise his sword to block it. Honestly, Ray himself couldn't understand why. "I shouldn't have been able to react in time." He gathered his strength and pushed Debo back, sending him sliding far away. Is he intentionally weakening his attacks? Up in the stands, Ariel was also shocked. She was startled when she looked through her divine eye. Inside Debo was a heart shrouded in mana. What is this power? A shimmering dark purple mana source enveloped his entire heart. Suddenly, Ariel looked over at Budra's group. The old man was still sneering. "These second years this year really have character issues. He can clearly end this at any time. And yet he just keeps dragging it out. It seems that all-seeing eye student is struggling to block every blow but still refuses to surrender. Doesn't that just prove he's not strong enough? Or maybe he knows the all-seeing eye division is about to be abolished, so he's trying to send us a signal. Because if we just keep waiting like this, the all-seeing eye spot will become a laughingstock." That makes sense. What an exemplary student thinking of the academy. All of the malicious comments were aimed at Ray. Suddenly, Ariel screamed, "Stop the match. Stop it immediately. It's dangerous." That old geezer Budra, with that same ugly look on his face, asked, "Dangerous? How are you talking about this mock battle?" Another guy chimed in with him, "It seems you're unaware, aren't you?" "Let me explain. The arena is covered by a high-strength protective barrier. Any attack that could be fatal will be automatically blocked, so students can fight with all their might without fear. Unless you have some other reason for wanting to stop the match. Down below, Ray was still struggling to defend himself. Up in the stands, Ariel explained, "Of course I know about the protective barrier, but it won't be enough to protect Ray." Instantly, a mana explosion erupted in the arena below. Ariel was utterly horrified that Debo had activated his heretical power. He took a stance, raising his sword high, then swung it down with immense force toward Ray. Ray was overwhelmed by the sight. The entire grandstand shook violently from that one sword strike. Ray looked down in terror. Where the blade had just swept past, a deep crater was left behind. It had sliced right through the Academy's barrier, and sliced right through Old Man Budra's fake arrogant pride. Ariel fretted, "The barrier, I told them so." She quickly cast a spell. "That bastard Bradley. I can't believe he implanted that thing in a student." But her magic was blocked by the barrier. Ariel was horrified. "The barrier on the grandstand side is too strong. I can't use a binding spell," she yelled. "This is an emergency. Deactivate the barrier now. Cancel the tournament. This isn't a swordsmanship match anymore." But that group of useless talkers were pale with fear. "Damn it!" Ariel screamed towards the arena. "Run! Stopping the match from the outside will take too long." He faintly heard someone yell, "Run!" But before he could react, he had to dodge a fatal blow from Debo. "If I turn my back for even a second, I'll die on the spot." The students were terrified by this spectacle. A professor standing in the stands looked down and thought to himself, "It will take at least 30 seconds for the professor's magic to reach the arena. That's too slow. It seems there's no other choice." He looked expectantly at Ray. It's still a bit early for him, but with full trust and support. "You have to do it, Ray," the professor shouted, instructing. "Ray, see your body as the sword itself. Don't swing the sword. Move your body with that power." As he struggled to dodge Debo's attacks, he thought, "My body is a sword." What does he mean by saying that all of a sudden? But if that's what the professor said, I'll do it. Ray stopped, thinking to himself, "No, I have to do it." He became calm. "I am a unique blade." He focused, concentrating everything. The other sword was about to take his life. It drew closer and closer, then slammed into a solid barrier. Behind Debo was Ray, swinging his sword. Debo looked behind him in terror. Ray had understood the instruction. He thought to himself, was he always this slow? No! He tightened his grip on his sword. He swung powerfully, paying Debo back for the hell he had just gone through. "I'm the one who's getting faster."